Well, I have 7 o'clock and we have a long agenda. So I think we should probably get started, and we should start maybe with the minutes from the last meeting. Anyone have any corrections?
No.
Online?
Approve the minutes as written.
I got a second. All in favor. Tom is online, so we have to do this as as a roll call. Tom,
Sorry, aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Aye.
Ken. Senior moment. Senior moment. Bill.
Aye.
What's
All right, Margaret is on. And I looked at you, I was like, how did I just lose his name?
Well, how about glasses on?
Sorry about
Santa
that.
Claus?
I think Ken should do these in perpetuity. Done a really good job at it.
Very good.
Oh, God.
All right, treasurer's report. Anything to report?
Nothing to report.
Okay, planners report we all received.
On the, just on the
treasurer's
treasurer's report, Bill, I must not have sent this to you, but I just wanted to bring to the board's attention, there was and I'll bring the, I put it in here. I didn't. There was, there's just a list of old funding articles that the town manager was going over, and you know, reaching out to the various different departments and boards about just old funding articles that seem to hadn't stalled out, never got used or anything, and those are just being wrapped back up into the general funds. There was an article for like $10,000-ish for the planning board back in special town meeting 2017, I think it was. It was for like 120 hours of technical assistance through CMRPC. It was never used,
Okay,
the funding. So there was that's proposed to just get taken back essentially. So just making the board aware of that. It looks like it's, again, never used, never touched.
Taken back by who?
Uh,
town.
by the town and wrapped back up into the general funds.
Oh.
Yeah, so, but not reallocated somewhere, just
The funding approved for?
CMR.
120 hours, I believe it was. 120 hours of CMRPC. I got the article.
I don't remember why.
150 hours, 9,750 for planning board to participate in the Central Massachusetts Regional Planning Commission Planning Board Assistance Program or to take any other action thereto.
We did participate in the planning board assistance program then,
But it looks like those,
or maybe it got paid out of the main planning account.
yeah, maybe your credit hours.
It was awesome. Yeah, no, because they've definitely, I remember, you remember that, Tommy, when we were in the planning board assistance program.
Yeah, but we didn't pay for it out of that account. We paid for it with our hours.
Okay. All right. Okay,
So
Was that-
do we need to vote to relinquish the fund?
No, unless the board has an issue with that, in which case I'll,
We'll just let
Yeah.
the town manager and accountant know that they can take it back.
okay.
I make a friendly suggestion.
Mhm,
I think we do take a vote on, because I know with the CPC,
mhm.
we ended up not being able to return money without, and it doesn't hurt us to take a vote.
That's, yeah, that's a good
all
point.
right, do I have a motion?
Yes, I have a okay.
Second.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a motion to return the $10,000 to the town main account. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, Tom,
Aye.
Kathy,
I,
Paul.
Aye.
good Joe next time.
I responded with that.
Okay, and Margaret, aye. Let's see, moving on. Okay, planners report. Thank you for sending it. Any updates or anything you want to add?
The only thing I'll add to that is that the Governor's Landing submitted their definitive subdivision application, so that'll be on for your next agenda to schedule a public hearing on that.
Okay, and that's the one house.
Yeah, the one lot, so two lot subdivision, yeah, on that.
Okay. You, all right. Moving on, we have 169 South Street. So, would you like to,
I'm just as a,
you're just here to the bottom, right?
yeah, we're just abutters, we're just listening.
Who's, Rick, who's presenting this?
Hey, good evening, everybody. Well, Sean and I will be presenting, and Sean, I'm sure will be doing most of the talking.
Yeah, you want me take it from here, Rick?
Yeah. sure.
All right,
Oh,
so,
Wait, actually, Sean, hold on just a second. This is a public hearing, so we need to suspend our regular meeting and open the public hearings at 7:06. Okay. I think we're all set now.
we're
Yeah,
good to
have to
go.
Yep.
Nice and legal.
Just
So,
one thing. Oh, did we,
I get,
one second, Madam Chairperson, did we receive all of the butters notifications back? All the
We
green-
did.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Sean.
okay. Okay, so I guess, my question to the board is, how do you want us proceed? I know we've kind of gone through this with preliminary. We talked about this, what was it, a month and a half ago? Do you want me to kind of run through the proposal again? We got some fire department comments. We got the comments from DGT this afternoon. I think Joe is on here. So I guess my question to you is, how do you want us to, we can go any way you want.
Yeah, so this is a new public hearing and there are members of the public here, so, give us a run through of the project. And then
All
we
right.
can talk to the DGT. I didn't see the DGT comments. They came in.
They came in this afternoon.
They came in this afternoon. I haven't seen them yet, so we'll have to start talking about those.
Absolutely. And if I may, I'll share my screen then. All right. So this is the proposed definitive subdivision at 169 South Street in kind of the bottom part of Upton. The overall parcel is about 86.5 acres. This is South Street here. We have residential homes here, as well as the other side of the street. And then a residential subdivision up this way. And over this way is the Taft Pond Brook that runs through the site here. And then a larger riverine area over to the left here. This parcel is undeveloped, but there is some history of it being used as a gravel pit some years ago by a former owner. And there is an existing roadway that comes in off of South Street and goes to the rear of the property here. And I'm going to switch to this overall plan, give a little more detail. This again is the Taft Pond Brook. We have wetlands around this area, wetlands to the south side here. And then this is the area that was formerly used as a gravel pit. There's also some wetlands up in this area. There's a lot of resource areas on this site, not only with respect to the wetlands and their associated buffers. We also have floodplain and an Army Corps flood easement, which is this shaded area here. We are proposing to subdivide this parcel into 5 lots. 4 lots would be constructed in the east side here. And this is all relatively good upland area. These are the wetlands on the side, but it's all high ground. So a majority of this subdivision development would be in uplands, with the exception of, we do have a wetland that kind of spans, it's not officially connected, and we've talked to the Conservation Commission about this, but there is wetlands on either side of that existing road. So we are cutting through there. So we do have some wetland impacts and buffer zone impacts. We have filed a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission and have had an initial hearing with them. We are scheduled to meet with them again tomorrow to kind of give them an update on where we are with the planning board and progress things. There was a couple small things they want us to look at One of those was a potential vernal pool in this area here. So we've gone ahead and added that to the plan. But again, 4 lots on this side on a cul-de-sac. It is 750 feet. This is more than your 500 feet standard, but it is within your 750 feet allowable length. And this again was shown on the preliminary plan. The back lot here is proposed to remain a separate lot. And as I think everybody knows, the owner is interested in creating a solar farm back here. We understand that's going to be a completely different permitting process. Any action on this application that this board takes has nothing to do with the final solar plan. We understand that, but just wanted to put that out there. Everybody kind of, I think, knows what the plan is. So with the specifics of the roadway, and I kind of flipped the plan a little bit here. South Street's up here. So 750 foot long cul-de-sac. We're proposing a 22 foot width on the paved width. This is a reduction of 4 feet from your standard of 26 feet. And this is proposed after discussion with primarily the Conservation Commission. And there was interest in reducing the amount of impervious area as well as the impacts to this wetlands that would be created by this roadway. We do have a sidewalk on one side of the roadway that leads down to these parking spaces. We have 4 public parking spaces with within an easement, within the right of way and a little bit outside within an easement. And that again was requested by the Conservation Commission. There is some thoughts that as part of the solar project, there may be some public access trails through that area, which details are yet to be worked out, but we're kind of planning for something along those lines.
Excuse me, may I interrupt a quick question?
Sure, Tom. Yeah.
What was the width of the roadway at the preliminary?
We
Just to show what-
we originally came in with a 26, and then at the end of the preliminary hearing, the notion of a smaller roadway was brought up by a Conservation Commission member, excuse me, at that meeting, and we did have a little bit of a conversation about reducing that width. And our takeaway from that was that the planning board may be okay with a 22 foot width, and that's what we've proposed here.
I'm never, thank you, but I'm never okay playing one board against the other, but thank you.
Yep. And I think it's, I'm not trying to put one against, yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not trying to put one against the other. It's, but I think that this was kind of, or the hope is that the 22 foot width kind of was good for everybody. And quite honestly, it's a four lot subdivision, 4 homes. There's not going to be a lot of traffic. So if anywhere, is a good reason for a reduced pavement width, save some impervious area, I think this is a good candidate, but we can discuss that further.
Yeah, because
sorry.
One of the things that I'd like you to discuss is why the planning board requires 26 feet, and why it's in the best interest of the planning board to reduce its. I understand about conservation; it's a different process. I'd like to know why our bylaw that says 26 feet wide is not good for you. I mean, we make other people do it, but I'd like you to explain why you don't have to do it later on.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's not go there right now, Tom. Let's get the whole presentation in, and then we'll have these discussions.
Yeah, makes sense to me. So we have a 5 foot sidewalk on one side of the roadway, which is required by your rules and regulations, leading to these parking spaces. We are the kind of creating a low point in reference to stormwater, kind of creating a low point in this area here. So we're bringing drainage down to this low point from South Street and then down from the top of the cul-de-sac to capture all the stormwater from the road. captured in deep sump catch basins and then piped down to an infiltration basin with a sediment forebay here. With our design and our drainage study, we showed that we do meet all the Mass DEP stormwater requirements for treatment and infiltration, recharge, as well as peak rate attenuation and volume. But I'll let Joe speak to that. I know that's part of his review as well. We are showing street trees on one side of the street here, and we've requested a waiver to just have it on one side of the street. Two reasons for that. One is in this area up here, we're accommodating a swale, a roadside swale versus curb and gutter. This was a request by the Conservation Commission to try to use LID techniques as much as possible. And when adding a tree in there with the sidewalk, there really isn't enough room. And the second part of that is we're planning on having utility poles coming in on this south side of the new road up to the road to the solar farm. Again, planning for the solar farm. We'll need to overhead wires back there to feed the system, and overhead wires and street trees don't really mix. So that's why we're proposing on one side of the street, and I'm sure we can have more discussion on that. I think that that pretty much sums it up. This is all private well and septic system on each of the lots, and once the road is established and the lots are legal, then the plan is to look at the specific development of each lot. They're going to kind of really be custom, not really cookie cutter. So those things, the well siting, the actual house design and location, septic siting, will come at a later date. All the lots meet your dimensional regulations and consistent to what we discussed as part of the preliminary. And with that, I'll turn it back to the board and see if there's any questions or where you want to go.
So you're asking for a waiver on street width, on trees on one side, any other waivers that you're asking for, Sean?
I have to refer to my notes here. Yes, I think we're requesting a waiver on the open space, the specific open space requirement. And part of that, I had this better defined in my my letter, and I apologize, I did not put it out beforehand. Okay, so the street trees, also street lights. Again, we're in a very rural area. And especially with the wetlands around, we didn't want to produce a lot of light. And so again, the very low volume road, we asked for a waiver of the street lights. The underground wires, so the other way to say it is the use of the utility poles, as I described. And then the open space requirement, and again, referring to the next phase of this project will likely have a probably almost certainly have a public component to it. And then the paved way. Yeah.
The streetlights, generally we require them, but then it's actually up to the select board. You know, we say where they would go if they're there, and then the select board decides whether to require them, and they usually don't because they cost the town money. So that's just a reality of the streetlights in subdivisions.
Okay.
Anyone have questions about the street design layout?
If I may, Madam Chairperson, I question on the swale. You would mention was it LID design? So is that a waiver as well from the typical street layout or the standard street layout that's listed in the subdivision control?
Good question, because a portion of our roadway, we do have the curb and gutter, this front portion of the site to get past the wetlands, and then where we have more of the open area, went to
Oh,
the, roadside
broader-
swale.
A more broader question for Mike would be, is an LID design in our subdivision control bylaws?
We allowed it, Tom, we've already allowed it once with the Kevin Lobiser, property on Hopkinton.
Was it a waiver?
Road.
Do you
I
remember if it
believe
was a
they
waiver?
will waive. We'd have to look back. That was what I was starting to wonder was how we handled it with them, but we definitely, that was an LID design in that subdivision.
Well, because if it's not currently in the bylaws as allowed, it would have to be a waiver, I would think. That was my more broad.
Through the chair, to Tom's point, I don't think limited impact development is explicitly called out anywhere in your
No.
subdivision rules and regulations or your bylaws. So yeah, no, I mean, and obviously you have the ability to waive those rules and regulations. As the
And
board
we
sees
did,
fit, so.
we did for a similar,
Mhm.
for a slightly
But it-
larger sub.
It would be a request from the road layout. It would be a waiver from the typical road layout, the standard road layout as shown in our subdivision control, right? Not only the road being narrower, but the sidewalk on one side, which would go on the side that gets the most sun, I would think, if it's one side. But those type of things are also waivers.
Yeah, they're mostly in the waiver list. It's just the LID design, the dropping of the curb and a swale for that section. It's not there.
Thank you.
3 waivers.
It's more than that. There's street trees on only one side, street lights.
Starting on page 4 of John's letter that he provided to the board, begins the waiver request. I'm sure board defers to Joe for his review. There might be more
Yeah.
waivers identified.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone else on the committee have questions now? If not, we'll hear from Joe, from the reviewing engineer, and then we can continue on from there. Then we'll have public comment. Okay, so. Joe, do you want to give an overview of your review?
Yeah, I can do that. Can everybody hear me all right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna try to keep this as brief as possible. I only want to kind of go over some of the, I guess, bigger ticket items that were listed in my review. Just to kind of summarize what I was seeing and, you know, get an opinion from the board and or comment back from the applicant or, you know, whatever. I guess the first thing, we had briefly discussed this towards the very end of the hearing during the preliminary plan review. It was with regards to the buildable area and the requirement for the lots needing to have 50% of the lot as buildable area. I believe that the discussion was directed towards the zoning bylaw requiring 80,000 square feet to be the minimum area for a lot in this zoning district, and the applicant being able to provide 50% of that as contiguous buildable area, not necessarily 50% of the lot area, but 50% of the minimum zoned area that's allowed, and their definitive plan is consistent with that conversation that was being had at the preliminary plan phase. I just am not aware as to, you know, where the board landed on, you know, determining if that is the sufficient way of doing this, or if, you know, fundamentally, if just procedurally a waiver needs to be applied for, or, you know, what you guys want to do with regard to that. But the way that the lots are laid out right now, 50% of the lot is not buildable, but 50% of the minimum zoned area is provided as contiguous buildable area on the lots. So that's, like, I guess the first thing, because if, you know, they don't have the correct area, then, you know, it doesn't really need to go much further than that. So that's really up to you guys and is probably a main item to address. Another thing that I saw in here, going back into just waiver requests, what, you know, in things that may need additional waiver requests or may not, section 3B2D, which basically is more of the existing conditions requirements, requires large specimen trees, ledge outcroppings and all that to be located on the plan. It's like the applicant has stated, it's 86.5 acres of property, mostly wooded. I'm assuming there's many trees on this property that would qualify, and I would assume that that is a big ask for the applicant to provide on a plan. I would assume, I don't know if you're gonna require them to apply for a waiver from that, to not show that, or if you typically just disregard that, but that is listed as a requirement in the rules and regulations, and not sure how you want to procedurally go about that. Another thing, so going back to the roadway width and the waiver request, if I'm reading the report that was provided by the fire department correctly, it appears that the fire department is requesting that the roadway from the intersection of South Street to the intersection of Road B, or the roadway to be used as access back to the potential solar farm in the future, they are requesting the roadway to be constructed per the rules and regulations for the width for that section of the roadway. So, I'm not sure how the applicant will go about necking down the road, after that point. Obviously, they can, you know, look into that design. But at least the section of the roadway from the intersection of South Street to the Road B, based on the fire department recommendations, needs to meet the 26-foot road width. So that might affect or just slightly change the waiver request or then the roadway design that was provided. And then I guess I just had a little bit of commentary, again, just staying with the waiver requests with regards to the street trees. The way I'm looking at the grading plan provided, it appears that there's a swale and the roadway cross-section details that were provided. It appears that there's swales along both sides of the roadway, from the end of the cul-de-sac at approximate station 650 down to where the two catch basins are located. And it appears that on the side of the roadway where the trees are proposed, there's 3 or 4 trees located in the swale. Not necessarily sure how the tree placement will affect the flow of stormwater in a swale. I have a feeling it would be, you know, counterintuitive, and it would prevent the flow of stormwater. So I guess I just, you know, with, again, asking for the waiver from the curbs to do the country drainage to appease the Conservation Commission, and then still providing trees along that side of the roadway, there just seems to be the potential for conflict with regards to that portion of the design in that area. So it was just something that I wanted to bring up, and I think might need a little bit more attention. One other, you know, thing that I guess is a bigger ticket item and may require a waiver is, I don't know how the board feels about dead end roads off of dead end roads. To me, if you're starting at a road that's not a through road and you're going to the end of a bulb, regardless of where that bulb is, it's basically the length of a road. And the applicants provided a 750-foot road off of a 750-foot road, none of which exit back to a main road. So from the mouth of South Street, where this development is proposed, to the end of the bulb at Road B, along the center line, roughly, with just using my bar scale, I measured about 1,200 feet, which would exceed the 750 feet. If you're allowed to, you know, have a dead end road neck off of a dead end road, that, you know, then they do provide the 750 feet of the roadway. But that road is even though it's not being developed, it is being used to provide the frontage to lot 5 because it's 2 right of ways. Lot 5 is currently would be created as a landlocked lot if it wasn't for road B. So lot 5 gets all of its legal frontage off of that roadway. So just with regards to how lots are created and things of that nature, even if the road isn't a road, it's still just for sense of meeting zoning, it is an important piece of the development to provide that frontage. And then these were just general comments. The parking spaces are located right at the intersection of the roadway. I'm not sure if anybody's looked into sight distance and or, traffic safety with regards to that. Somebody's pulling onto the roadway while someone's trying to pull out of a parking space. I don't know if that provides, some sort of, area of concern. I'm not sure, maybe the parking spaces could be located somewhere further into the development if it's going to be used for a trail that's going to be proposed at the solar farm portion of the site. Might be a better location to avoid, the traffic at the intersection. And then from a stormwater standpoint, I guess my main, I have minor comments. Generally, it appears the applicant is providing, stormwater basin that's sized properly. It seems that they have the proper TSS removal. Seems like they're capturing the runoff from the area. I do have some documentation, comments that I'd like to just have clarified with the applicant. The main item that I have with regards to stormwater in my review is that the design is currently incorporating the site as just a roadway and the rest of the site as wooded. Given the awkward shape of some of these lots, buildable areas, and the fact that there needs to be a house, a septic system, and a well, and a driveway, and then all of the dwelling, the septic system, and the well all have some general setback to stormwater management BMPs. There seems to be limited room to address any extra stormwater runoff that would occur from development of these properties. They're going to have to, at minimum, cut down some of these trees, and even if they just plant grass, there's an increase in runoff from doing that. And then that's not really accounted for in the current stormwater design. So, without really pre-planning and accounting for any of that in the original design that's provided right now, it would require all of the lots to individually take care of the increase in stormwater runoff. And again, because of the limited area and the need to put all of those things on the different properties, they're kind of running out of room with regards to, finding an extra place to put an on-site infiltration system or something like that. So I just didn't know if, I know the previous plan had 2 infiltration basins. This plan eliminated the one that's at the end of the cul-de-sac. So there's like a little bit less drainage on this plan than the previous plan. I just, I didn't know, if it was worth, taking some steps to pre-plan for the development of the rest of the property, considering that is the ultimate goal of what's to be done here. Again, I had some other minor comments in the report, but I'd say those are probably some of the more bigger ticket items that I had. And I'll turn it over to the board and or the applicant and or the abutters.
Okay, thank you, Joe. I think what we can do is maybe just take these one at a time and have a little discussion of each and let the applicants hear what we're thinking and we'll hear what they're thinking in that regard. The first one was the definition of buildable area, whether it's 50% of the actual lot versus 50% of the minimum lot size in that zone. And I guess I sort of asked myself, and this is obviously the other board members can weigh in, if we had a 15-acre lot that had 2 acres of contiguous upland in an 80,000 square foot zone, would we say it had enough contiguous upland? Or would they have to have for that 15 acres? Are we saying they'd have to have 7.5 acres of contiguous upland in order to build one house?
Just to comment, I thought we discussed this.
We did, and I think we
did.
came to the
And I think-
conclusion that it's of the
zone,
the
it's
zone.
the total for that
But
exact
I want to
reason.
make sure that
Yeah.
everyone is on board before we move on
Yeah.
from that.
I
Does
thought-
anyone feel differently about that? Tom, how do you feel about that? Is it the zone or the actual lot you're looking at?
We've never solved this one because the 15,000 square foot zone downtown should be considered different than an 80,000 square foot agricultural residential. It's the buildable lot for the house, and it shouldn't equate to the zone because now you're saying that at 20,000 square feet, you'd need to build a house in an 80,000 square foot zone, or let's say 40, half of it has to be. So that means you can only build a house if you have 40,000 square feet. But in a 15,000 square foot zone, you only need 7. It doesn't make any sense. So it has to be common to all the lots. Just an
No,
opinion.
what this, in this example though, Tom, we're saying, suppose you have a 15-acre lot. If they have 160,000 square feet of contiguous upland, is that enough, or does it actually have to be 7.5 acres the way that you could potentially read our bylaw?
Well, I would say that they'd have, a 15-acre lot would have to qualify for what a 2-acre lot would. You'd need 40,000 square feet.
Okay, so then it's the zone. You're agreeing then that it's the zone, not the lot size. And I think that's what all of us agreed to, so. Does that make sense, everybody?
Yeah.
All right. The next question was about existing conditions and mapping of large specimen trees. A lot of that 80 acres has no large specimen trees on it because it's a giant sand pit. It's been cut over many, many times because Sunny also logged out there. How do we feel about whether we should be mapping specimen trees out there?
There is, through the board, there was a concern about a grove of pines out like,
Out on an upland
yeah.
and like an island of.
Yeah.
Because a lot of that's been cut over years. I don't know. Did you guys walk out there on your site visit?
No, I walked that property a couple of times,
Yeah.
but I don't,
I've
it's been
walked
a
it.
while.
I haven't walked it for a long time. I used, when some of the
When-
I used to
yeah,
I
walk.
went out there and it was, I mean, it looked like it had been taken down many times
Oh,
and
yeah.
thrown back up, so I didn't notice except for on the edges of the property, the
Right.
older growth.
What constitutes a specimen tree?
It's a little smaller than I would think of, to be perfectly frank. It was something like, I thought it said like a 6 or 8 inch DBH, which is not a specimen tree to me. Do you know what it says in the,
yeah, I'm looking this,
That would require a waiver to,
do not map every tree that's bigger than.
Yeah. I would support on a site even without knowing, because that's a pretty small tree.
Oh, I agree, that's too, yeah, but that's why I don't remember what the definition of specimen tree was. Sean, do you remember what the definition of specimen tree was in the bylaw?
Not offhand, no, but I agree with you that I think it was smaller than you'd think.
I remember
But
thinking
wasn't it always the biggest or the best of each species? It would be one in the middle of its species, not a forest. It would be just that one representative of its species. Doesn't have to be big, but it's got to be beautiful, right? It's got to be impressive to be a specimen tree.
A bylaw could
You
be
can't-
that subjective.
you can't be that, I mean, what I think is a beautiful tree might differ from what you think is a beautiful tree. So I think it has a DBH in there. But I can't
If you
remember.
If you say it's beautiful, Madam Chairperson, it's beautiful.
we don't, in the regulations, we must not define it as specimen tree. We must use some other,
Yeah, I can't, maybe it said, I can't remember what the regulations said.
Well, very well, they just say any tree with.
A DBH.
Greater than.
Greater than, yes.
That sounds.
It was in existing conditions mapping. See if you can Google that within the regs. It says.
Yeah, our thing is only diameter. As far as I remember, our only thing on trees that they have to tell us about when they put in the plan is over a certain diameter.
That's what I remember too, but I remember it being a small diameter and thinking, a lot of
I'm used to that verbiage being something like a something caliber tree.
Oh, yeah, it could be caliber. Just. The science nerds say DBH, which isn't really
Is the purpose for that just so that we can see how many trees potentially would be?
I think that was the purpose of it. Were there other things, Joe, in the mapping, the existing conditions mapping? I know you mentioned ledge outcroppings. A lot of it's a sand pit, not a lot of ledge outcropping down there.
No, it said it's major land such as existing walls, fences, buildings, large trees, wooded areas, outcroppings, ditch, waterways. There's like a ton of stuff. It like they
Okay.
basically, most significant natural features and or man-made features they want to have on the existing conditions plan.
So it's already got all wetland stuff on the existing conditions. I don't remember looking on the plan. Are the stone walls on the plan too?
There are some stone walls on the plan, yeah, are on the outside of the property, because they have drill holes labeled and walls and things of that nature that I saw on the plan.
See, basically, it's trees that you think is missing from the plan. Sounds like. And I don't
Yeah.
think, yeah.
But the only thing that we require on, I believe, on a planning board is trees every certain number of feet on the street and one area of shade to each lot. So I'm sure that there are more trees than what are required by our bylaws for this plan. And if it's grown, I'm not sure trees are a problem.
So does anyone have concern about having every tree onto the?
Nope.
All right. All right. The big one is the roadway width, and that the fire department requested full width to the intersection with the road to or one of the big ones with the road to the future potential solar farm. I did not see that letter, so did they give a reason for this request?
I think it was because if they ever needed to access the solar farm itself, being more of a, commercial like use, they just wanted to have proper access. They made recommendations on how the unimproved road needed to be, like they wanted some sort of alarm system, I believe. They were talking in, fire department terms. I wasn't necessarily 100% versed in. I just the thing that caught my eye with regards to the development itself as a subdivision. The comment that I saw was that they wanted a full width roadway from the intersection of South Street to Road B, and then they said something along the lines of after that point it can be minimized by a couple of feet, I believe they said in their letter.
It would, if I may, sorry to interrupt, but it would make sense for the planning board to ask the fire department if instead of 26 down to 24 or 40, why can't 24 all the way through? Is it that they'd prefer 26 and the 24 would work? And if that's the case, they could go and not have a reduction in the road width at it's usually not safe to reduce road width at a certain point.
Yeah, we had, Sean, so today Sean and I talked about this, and I ended up sending Dan an email asking him if we could go down to 24. So like Joe said, they're requesting 26. We're at 22 and asked them if they can go down to 24. I mentioned that South Street is 20 feet wide
Yeah,
And,
that's the thing is, you can't convince me that if the truck can get down South Street, that it can't get up 24-foot road. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, exactly.
For the chair, I think the concern from the fire department is more relative to turning radius. And so in his letter, he mentions being open to a reduction of that, like Joe was saying, a reduction of the width 1 to 2 feet. As it sounds like as it continues into stretches into towards the proposed solar field. But it sounds like maintaining that 26-foot width for a certain portion in order to retain some sort of turning radius at the junction of the two roads. Rick and Sean, is that basically your understanding of their comment?
I think that may have been part of it, and I'm not sure if he was also referring to then the cul-de-sac. They still need to turn around up there, but my takeaway on what you were just talking, Michael, and in this comment is we'll provide some turning template sketches to show the turning movements. We'll be in contact with the fire department, get their dimensions for their apparatus and submit that.
You know, might be good to hear exactly what their concern is, because as we all know, those of us that live on South Street or down on Oak Road, on Oak Street, on Oak Road, the road is not that wide going down there. And so,
If you can't get a fire truck down the road.
if you can get a fire truck to this road, then you can get a fire truck down a 22-foot road. So,
And if I may, Madam Chair, there was just, so we basically saw there was more or less 4 comments from the fire department. And I just wanted to walk through those real quick. We already hit on one, but just make sure everybody's on the same page. They wanted the individual sprinkler systems in all the homes. And we've already agreed to that. We do have a note on the plan. They talk about a dry hydrant at the town-owned Tap Pond Dam, an access ramp, and also a gate. So when Rick spoke with the fire department before, this was more specific to the solar project, and especially with all these homes having a sprinkler system involved, we wanted to make that distinction that we think that this requirement should go with the solar project in the future rather than the immediate definitive.
I would say depending on how close they want to put that hydrant to the dam.
Well,
that dam is not in good shape. That dam is.
and that's
it's
part
on the
of
state list.
And that's part of why I wanted to put this out in front of everybody and see if we get a consensus here, because I mean, there's also additional layers of permitting on that, I believe, with Conservation Commission, and not sure what else, to be quite honest with you. So we totally understand if that needs to be part of the solar farm in order to provide the life safety there. But for this, again, all the houses have sprinkler systems. We wanted to just see if that would be, a condition in the future.
Okay.
And then the last thing we just talked about the roadway, and then the last thing was just again about the solar field. Joe had referenced it, just some of the requirements for access for that and fire suppression for that specific. So again, that would come down the road rather than right now as part of this application.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll investigate more on the road width, just going through Joe's list, and I'm glad that we had the discussion about the sprinklers. Good to know that they're going to be there, and I do think the hydrant. I was sort of surprised by that, because there were. When was that the state came out and declared that was a high risk? I think it's considered high risk of failure. There was a proposal at one point to rebuild part of it, and the state was like, don't touch that thing. So
Stay away.
But it's not a high risk of damage because of the, there's no one that's gonna get washed away by it unless you're driving.
Mhm.
And it did overtop this pretty badly this year.
Oh, yeah,
If
it was
you
running.
lived down there, yeah.
It was running.
It was fun. Okay, So roadway width, we talked about that. Street trees, on both sides, or are there actually swales on both sides? And the street trees in the swale issue, are you want to just address that when you work on the plans again in the future?
Yes, and yeah, as a clarification, we do on the second half of the cul-de-sac, we do have swale on both sides, and we are showing the tree in the swale bottom. So we'll look at doing something there. And one of the big limiter on the other side, why we're requesting that waiver, is the sidewalk. So when you fit in the swale, the sidewalk, the right of way, you know, you kind of run out of room for street trees real quick.
Okay. All right. So, but you'll look at the one in the swale, and otherwise we'll just talk about the street tree as a waiver. And we get,
Power lines.
and
Yeah.
the power lines. Yeah.
And the power lines, yes. Thank you.
The issue, and this is one for the board to think about, the dead end road off the dead end road. And so that brings it to a 1,200-foot road. How do
We do it all
people,
the time, Madam Chair. We do it when we've approved roads that are 750 feet long. The road, we have a 50-foot access to undeveloped land. Time goes by, the town approves the road, and then they build another subdivision off of the dead end road. So, I mean, we make it into a single road, but we have dead end roads off of dead end roads all the time throughout years.
okay,
It was always can the emergency vehicles get to it with the layout that we approve? Is that
Yep.
something that the biggest equipment that we have, can it get to it safely?
okay. Parking spaces and their location in terms of site distances and people turning into the new subdivision while someone's pulling out of the parking space. I don't know where the parking spaces are proposed, or that I mean, I know where the big wide spot is, obviously. I assume that they're right in there right now. Proposed parking spaces for hikers.
But a question, Mark, would this not be more relevant to the discussion about the solar farm later on down? Like,
What, the parking spaces?
yeah, well, mainly because they can use not to access the subdivision, but to
To
access.
access the solar farm,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think these parking spaces are to access like a trail off the road, if
Mhm.
I'm not mistaken.
Right, yeah, because, right now, I think the plan is that maybe a trail potentially going around the little, it's really nice back there.
Because I
Yeah,
think,
and-
oh, go ahead. Sorry, good chair.
Well, I was just gonna say, Michael, that, you know, these parking spaces really want to be part of the subdivision road. You know, when that's built, there's easements associated with it, you know, to go back and amend the subdivision road at a later date through the solar project might be kind of a pain. So that's why we thought it would just be easier just to fold them in right now and get them on there.
Can it be
And it
handled through signage? Sorry to interrupt. Can it be
Uh,
saved through?
I guess I'm not following, like, what kind of sign? I don't think we're proposing any specific signage there. Do we talk about any specific signage, Rick?
Well, I maybe have misunderstood, but don't you have a parking lot next to the entrance road or next to the road? And you don't
Right,
want
yeah.
people coming in at the same time? Can that intersection be handled through signs instead of a re-layout of the road later on?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, the parking spaces are 40 feet away from the edge of road, but I think one of Joe's other comments was just regarding the sight distance, the sight lines, you know, what somebody exiting this road is looking at, and if there's other cars coming in for the parking. So I think that's a valid question, and we are gonna get out there and take a look at the sight lines and get you something on that.
Okay, so you'll get back to us on that one then. And the
Yes.
same, I assume that you'll also get back to us with a response to some of the stormwater issues that Joe just raised with the lot runoff being included or not included in the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. And so I gotta dig into some of these questions a little bit more, but we'll provide a response to, all these questions that he has on the plans, why we did what, and whether or not we need revisions, and explain that. I just had one thing real quick, and it was on Joe's list. He didn't, really list it as a biggie, but I don't want it to come back later. It was just a comment regarding the roadway profile. We're showing at a 50 scale. The rules and regs require 40 scale or less. And then the second part of that is the rules and regs talk about a elevation datum of NGVD 1929 versus we're using NAVD 1988. And 88's obviously the newer one. That's what flood zones are all based on, and so that's why we kind of wanted to keep that. So whether or not we need a waiver or kind of where we stand to proceed
So we
as
need
we're
to
proceeding.
update our bylaw, I think it sounds like.
Maybe.
I don't think we need a waiver to use the more.
The modern one, the updated one.
No.
Okay.
Right. And the 40 scale versus 50 scale, does anyone have a big issue with that?
If Joe was able to read it at that scale, we're fine, right?
Right?
Yeah, no, I guess, just just FYI, unless I'm scaling it wrong, I think the vertical scale is actually 1 inch equals 10. It's listed as 1 inch equals 5. So, it's supposed to be 1 inch equals 4. So, I mean, I can read it.
I'll check it.
It's fine. I guess just when you're going through it, just update that.
Yeah,
Well, if
yeah,
I
I'll
may-
double check that.
Yep.
Um,
Sheriff, a lot of these things are engineering. I was reading a letter, things like if you put it was missing the 100-year flood mark. I don't know if that affects anything, but there was a lot of engineering questions that need to be answered. So
Yep.
my proposal is that we continue this hearing, give you a chance to answer the engineering questions, and I appreciate this hasn't changed much from the preliminary. You've been in for a while. We should have anticipated a lot of these issues, which I think we did.
So does anyone, before we stop tonight, does anyone on the board have any more questions for them? And then I'll ask for the public questions.
No.
Anyone?
Can I bring up one more thing?
Only question,
Yeah, go ahead.
the only question I have is the telephone poles.
Yeah.
I know that's being set up for the solar field. Does that mean and I know we can't talk about the solar field because that's not before the board. But does that mean that there'll be poles within the solar field? Because obviously from a site perspective, I wouldn't want to look out my backyard and see telephone poles.
Right.
Um,
Does
No,
any-
it's likely anything coming out of the solar farm will be underground. Everything, most of the poles are gonna be located up in this subdivision.
So the poles will just be along the street in the subdivision, you think?
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
But they'll carry they'll carry the electricity on the poles, right?
Yeah.
They won't have underground coming into the development?
There may be underground coming up through the access road into the subdivision roadway and then coming up into a pole. We haven't fully defined that yet. We're waiting for feedback from National Grid, but that's the plan right now. I think we have 5 poles on the road.
Yeah, Rick, I was just trying to avoid the poles in the solar farm, the field. So they're just in the neighborhood. I have no issue with that.
Yeah, they won't be in the pit.
Okay,
It's all on the ground all the way up.
thank you.
That was the
Got it.
same thing. Charlie and I were thinking the same.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone? All right, so
Anybody online?
anyone online have?
Looks like Joe needs to say something.
Oh, Joe?
Yeah, I just wanted, just one more thing, just so it doesn't get lost in the shuffle here. I'm sorry, I missed this one. The driveway layout for lot number 1 in regards to the intersection of Road B. The most of the driveways in the right of way of Road B, and I don't think that it has the 55-foot setback from an intersection. Again, I know it's paper road. It is going to be used for access. People are going to be driving on it. So I just, you know, it doesn't necessarily meet that 55-foot setback. And there doesn't really look to be a lot of wiggle room there based on where the wetlands are. So I just, you know, bringing it up, you know, guess, you know, something to take a quick look at on the, you know, on the revised plan. And just wanted to kind of point that out as one other thing that doesn't necessarily meet the regulations right now that might need to be looked at, just so I didn't forget. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one more thing that we'll hear probably from you about Sean going forward, or?
Yes.
Right. Do we have when do you think you'll want to come back?
Let me think realistically here. To get something revised and back to you, respond to the comments, probably is not going to happen before 2 weeks or so, 2 or 3 weeks. I think it would probably be good to have Joe do his review of the revised plans at that point and then come back to you. So what are we looking at? Like 4 weeks? What do you think, Rick?
That would be our second meeting in October, which would be the 22nd. Do you think you can do October 22?
Where are we?
Next
What do you think,
Our
Rick?
next meeting is October 8th, then there's
Yeah.
October 22.
It's fine with me.
Yeah, I think October 22nd makes sense.
Okay,
Excuse me.
all right, we'll put you on for October 22nd. We'll continue this meeting to October 22nd at 7:10. I don't think we have anything else on there yet, do we? Do we have the ADU?
That's October 8th.
That's October 8th. Okay, yeah. So October 22nd at 7:10, how's that?
The constructive grant deadline for this application is either the 29th of October. So we're just, if we need to extend.
We can, yeah, so we'll probably have
So we don't need
to
to
extend at that meeting because the deadline is 9th of October.
Okay.
Okay,
All right.
All right.
Great.
great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, all. Take care.
Bye-bye. Oh, we are, no, we're not closing the public hearing. We're
Oh.
continuing the public hearing until October 22nd at 7:10.
Our regular.
And now we are returning to our regular meeting, which we will suspend to open a public hearing for an amendment to the zoning map and zoning bylaws.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much for the MBTA zoning compliance district. Do we have anyone from the public that would like to talk about the?
That's first.
Oh, well, I guess the question I have first is, do we have anyone from the public here for this public hearing?
I had something I wanted to say about this, but I thought it would come at the end of your discussion.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know if you were just here for the other one, okay. So we want to try to have a quick discussion of, do you want to
I'll just kind of, yeah. 'cause it's
give a
pub-
quick
yeah.
overview?
So, and I'm forgetting when now exactly, the state passed this law. It's been in the books for quite a while now. So the state enacted new law amendment to 40A, inclusion of subsection 3A of Mass General Law, which requires MBTA communities as defined by the law. And there is an actual clause within MGL that lists all the, I want to say 169 communities that are technically designated as MBTA communities. And Upton is on that list, surprisingly enough. And that is, as we've learned, is due to proximity to our neighbors, to Grafton and Westboro, who both have tube stations. So that's how that's defined. Upton was defined as, you just said, a rural adjacent community, meaning we're below a certain threshold of population, but still accessible to a town with a T station. So that new law requires all of those communities that are noted as such, and you know, obviously Newton is being treated much differently than Upton is being treated. Upton is being treated differently from how Grafton is being treated because Grafton has a T station. The requirement per the state is that Upton must provide a multifamily zoning district by right that needs to accommodate for up to 150 dwelling units. And at 15 units per acre is the density requirements. This board has been working on that to come up with a plan for compliance with that law that the Attorney General has opined that it is not. You have to. It's not an optional requirement. It is so anyway. So this board has been looking at that, engaged the services of RKG Associates to produce an economic feasibility analysis, which was provided to this board for a certain component of that bylaw to understand the feasibility of it. And so this point, and having had a public outreach meeting August 12th, I believe it was, August 12th over at the community center, this board presented the proposed district for this, for compliance with this law. And that district, difficult to define in words just because it's a stretch of woods along 140, but going south on 140, it is located on what is the general business district currently, which stretches 300 feet in from the road, on a couple parcels that have already been slated for development, known as the Governor's Landing site. So it is will be located or proposed to be located on a site that has already undergone a rigorous review process through this board as far as higher density than is typically allowed in your zoning bylaws. So that district is proposed. It is approximately 14 acres along Route 140, and I've run the compliance models for compliance with this new law with CMRPC and RKG. And it seems as though this proposed district will be in compliance with all the rules, regulations, CMR, what have you, that the state is requiring Upton to provide. So I can share, or I'll try to track down the actual map of the zoning district
Can I ask
so
a
that you
question
can all
while
see
you're
it.
doing that through the chair? Why are we going for the 14 acres rather than the 10?
Because there's wetlands
Okay,
located, yeah,
so it's not 14 acres of developable.
no,
Okay.
yeah, so it's,
Acres of.
Yeah,
And
that's what.
that, and that, remember, there was
Yeah.
some clauses around
Yeah.
that, yes. Because if you could do 10 acres, when not all of it would be developable,
Yeah.
then you'd have to allow for higher density
Yeah.
on the developable acres.
so this is where the proposed district, again, hard to define. Because like I said before, it's all woods here. This is this little lot towards the south is a truck or engine repair of some sort.
It was rug sales or something.
I forget. I want to say, I think it's called like Upton Truck Repair now,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
I'm not terribly sure.
That was still the rug guy.
Yeah.
Okay.
He still puts rugs outside.
You can see it's,
Blue metal building?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rug and truck repair.
Pardon me? It is.
Rug and truck repair.
Yeah.
It's cars in front.
Okay, so any questions from the board or comments from the board? So we've talked about-
Just one, I'll make mine quick and get out of the way. This is an unfunded mandate, is that correct?
Correct.
And the Attorney General is appointed by the executive branch of the state.
Elected.
It's an elected position, Tom.
But they're not part of the judiciary.
No,
They would represent the executive branch in any kind of a lawsuit, but they wouldn't be part of the judiciary. Judicial side. So my problem is, and the premise is that the state has the right to have an unfunded mandate with the penalty of we're going to withdraw funding if you don't comply, is ridiculous. That's how a parent talks to a child. Do what I say or I'm going to take away something from you. That's not the way a state should talk to a town. That's it.
Okay,
well, that's why some of the towns have fought back and
Yeah.
the state's in a tug of war with a lot of towns about that mandate now. It's very unsettling when they say you can take your taxes, but we're going to withhold the money that we need to give you. That's.
But it is what.
what it is.
What it is.
We're gonna try to comply. If we don't succeed, then it's gonna cost the town a lot of money in the other direction, so.
Pretty tough.
And we're dealing with 3 of these now, 3 funded mandates now. But let's just go on with it.
Okay, so. At the same time, I totally agree with the goal here of creating more affordable housing locations. Public comment on the proposed bylaw.
Point of order, Margaret, it's not affordable housing.
That's true, yes.
It's additional.
So additional housing, yes, it's housing. And comment on this bylaw.
Okay, I think it's about this. Okay. I wanted to speak up for sustainability in the project as for Sustainable Upton. It's my understanding that the intention of the MBTA Community Building Initiative is to help provide needed housing in towns next to towns that have commuter train stops. This is in an effort to encourage people to take the train, minimizing car travel, which contributes to much greater global temperature rise. That's the reason for the project. I also recognize that in the interest of preserving open space, a goal Upton has expressed as far back as I can remember, it's important to build housing near where there is already existing housing and where there are services. At the same time, we don't want to add to global temperature by causing greater traffic, requiring cars to increase emissions by idling endlessly at traffic lights. Right now, at morning and afternoon rush hour, a car may sit through 2, 3, or 4 chambers of the light at the intersection of Route 140 and Maple Ave, going north, south, and east-west. If we make the MBTA community on Route 40 on the way to Milford and the 40B project at 47 Main Street, we'll be adding a potential 420 cars to what we already have. What did I?
I'm sorry, what was that? Or somebody might be, just have their.
Yeah.
Can you mute Kathy, maybe?
I
Somebody.
think Kathy might want to say something.
Yeah, she got a cat.
Okay,
Okay. This is regardless of what gets built across from the Imperial gas station on the land, which was just bought by a developer. So 420 potential extra cars if it's 2 per unit, as we've discussed. If, on the other hand, we continue to think of Governor's Landing, which has nearly been approved for 55 development of 110 to 127 units, we still add to the traffic, but less so, since people over 55 are likely to have fewer than 2 cars per family than a younger family. Over 55s will stop working comparatively soon and will more likely want to walk downtown than younger folks heading off to work. In order to access commuter rail in Ashland, Grafton, or Westboro, people living near Upton Center would have to travel nearly a half hour through miserable traffic to Route 495 during rush hour or longer to get to the train. This entirely defeats the point of the bill to add much needed housing while reducing dependence on cars and increasing fossil fuel emissions. I submit that very few people living in a development like this near Upton Center will take the train at all. If they already sat in their cars over half an hour to get to the highway, they'll just keep driving. In addition, if we build this downtown, Upton taxpayers will be responsible for water and sewer hookups to these residences. So where can we build a community that already has housing nearby, has excellent access to trains and exceedingly fast access to the highway, significantly lessening the emission of fossil fuels? I say East Street, close to Rockwood Meadows and the development beside it in Hopkinton. This will leave open space intact and prevent Upton Center from becoming a nightmare for drivers and walkers alike. The downtown revitalization determined that Upton Center should remain a should remain a walkable community. We could still build the original Governor's Landing, which was going to be built anyway, and this MBTA community, which will provide much needed housing, moving the percentage of affordable housing in Upton much closer to the 10% mark and have less traffic impact on the town. The developer would provide water and sewer instead of the townspeople as they did at Rockwood Meadow, and we could have the tax revenue from both developments while still maintaining more of the small town historic feel of Upton Center. The other thing is we're gonna be monitoring air quality, and it's around the heavily trafficked areas where there's a lot of cars and emissions going on. So there will be some around 140. There'll be something at the intersection at 140 and Maple Ave and places like that. I know that there can be traffic going from East Street to those lights there, but it's nothing like the traffic we're experiencing downtown. So I understand that it feels like people living downtown expect to have building around them, and we do, and we are. But I think that we want to begin to, like in the olden times in Upton, there were several different pockets of building areas in Upton. And that area up there near Rockwood Meadow would be a perfect one. There's land there. I mean, that fulfills the goal of the law. They want us not to use our cars. They want us to drive less. They want us to get to a train. They want us to get to a highway quickly. If you live in downtown, it's going to be a nightmare to even get there before you even try. So I just want to submit that I think there's a lot of good reasons to think of that site as well.
Now, we did discuss the site that up on the street at the public. I think the fact that there's already a proposal at Governor's Landing. I can't remember our discussions around.
Yeah, I think the other thing was, that the, distance from emergency vehicles, from fire and, because it's way at the outskirts of town, and to do something of that size, that far away from, where the emergency vehicles was. And I think that the other thing is, the lack of water and sewer. Because, you look at Main Street, you're gonna have sewer, and you already have water. So I think those were the big issues, that we discussed at the last meeting. Just as a point of information, because I corrected her, I'm gonna correct you. It is not affordable housing. That is a bugaboo for me. It is housing. It is housing for rich people. It's housing.
Right, but we could put some affordable units.
Oh,
in
yeah,
there, couldn't we?
yes, we could. It's not gonna help, but
Because the governor's thinking we're doing helping us at all. This
No,
is maybe.
It's open.
I fully agree. But again, you said affordable housing. I just, people think that automatically.
Also, through the chair, the proposed bylaw does have an inclusionary zoning component in it,
Yes.
which will require that any building in this proposed district must have an affordable housing component in it. And this board is proposed the 12.5% ratio, which is above the state minimum of 10%. So conceivably, if 150 buildings were to be dwelling units, not buildings, dwelling units were to be constructed as a result of the district,
18 or so.
Yeah, 18. And so that would be beyond, obviously, the 15, you'd be in the hole for, essentially, right? That you'd be negative 15 where you did not have the inclusionary zoning portion of it. But yeah, that's an important consideration to Kathy's point. It is not.
No, it's not, yeah.
That was not the original intent of the law when the state passed it. They acquiesced on that portion of it because the towns are pushing back so hard.
And just as another sort of comment about sustainability, I think if you're looking at a site that's already going to be disturbed and already going to be developed, in the spirit of sustainability, it's better than going after
the East Street site is probably, how many times have we looked at that subdivision?
Right, but for 150 units, it's going to be a bigger, it's going to be
much
10
bigger.
acres. Yeah, that's
It's
much
really
bigger.
proposed. Last it was
Yeah.
what, 20 units up there?
So, it's, so yeah, but I think the issues we talked about were fire, emergency.
What's the current density of the Governor's Landing development?
It's not terribly dense, I don't think. What is it like? It's about 80 acres worth, but it's 127 units.
The front is relative.
Yes.
I thought it was 27 units in the front.
No, it's more than 27 units.
It's 27.
I'll look at, I'm
How's
probably,
that?
27.
The net increase to the town in housing units would be then, you know, less than if you looked at a brand new area. And
I thought the front was more than 27. 'Cause it was
27,
25?
25. I think we're more, well, it's a hard thing to think about getting in the car and going through a lot of traffic to get to the train or the.
No, I
highway.
totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. I think what really is needed is a bus, basically a shuttle bus that runs to those train stations through from town.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't take the train.
anyone that,
Right, because it doesn't make, I mean, I'd love to.
You could, you know, the one from Ashland, from East Street is a quick shot. It would be, I would do it in a minute, you know? And then actually, if you go down that road, that's actually right there, you go across to Westboro, it's even closer for that train.
that's the one that I would go to from there, but, and that was what we had talked about.
Yeah.
it is about 80 acres worth of land, the entire development.
The entire development is 80 acres.
Yeah.
And they've got, you know, they've got the grocery store, they've got the highway there, they got the gas station's gonna be right there pretty soon. It's just, you know, a lot up there.
Should have been shot down.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
I've been looking and looking for this plan. It's already really dense. You've got 100 units in the back and then 25 or so in the front. How is this working with the 150 units? Could you, are you going to squish in another
be in the
25
front.
units in the front?
Yep.
There's no information about this anywhere. I've been looking for a week. Where are you going to be putting more units?
So
We have no proposal. What we're saying is the front of the property, that 15-acre strip in the front, will be zoned such that it can be built up at that high density. We're not proposing any, we have no plan.
150?
Yes, our job is to
150
find,
units in the front of
Yes.
140?
yes,
That's ridiculous.
Just,
That's 150 units in the front, all going down Route 140?
yeah, yeah,
just
just
through the chair, just another point of information is the way the law is written. It doesn't require that a developer build out 150 units.
Yeah.
What it does is it says the town must create a zone somewhere, 10-acre zone, that will allow
150.
150 units. And so, you know, again, I think that's one of the misconceptions of this. It's, you know, another area we talked about was just a circle around downtown. You know, because, you know, and it's not gonna.
You mean
possible to build-
150 after the 127 that GL already has? You
No,
want to put
no, let me-
another 150?
Okay, let me try again. The proposal that is in there right now is in two parts. The piece in the back and piece in the front, right? The piece in the front, you just said is 27 units. For some reason, I
Kathy seems to think there's 25.
okay. It's two pieces. The piece in the back is unchanged by this, okay? The big piece of land is unchanged by this. Only the strip of land in the front will be zoned such that that developer could come back to us with a proposal to put 150 units in the front. That would
That's
bring us,
ridiculous.
that would bring us
That's
into,
nuts.
okay, well, that was what will bring us into compliance with state law. So we have to have a place somewhere where we have a 10-acre lot, a 10-acre zone that would allow for 150 units.
Yeah, would allow.
Would allow for, I didn't say
Yeah.
require, it would allow for 150 units on 10 acres. Somewhere we must do that. This is the place we thought made most sense in our town.
As a
And
person who
in terms
lives
of,
in,
I also wanted to say, I would like to finish, something, Marcella, that you mentioned is the water and sewer. The developer is actually currently bringing, water and sewer to that site already. So.
Well, the
it's
town is.
Not
With the town.
with the town, but that was
The
already,
town
that's
is
already
bringing it
in
to the site.
process. Whereas up on
State
East,
is.
there's no water and sewer.
But typically, on development like that, I think the developer does it.
But we're already doing,
Yeah.
we're already doing it, so it's not like we're requiring,
Right.
it's gonna happen one way or another.
Right, but it's gonna go much further than it was gonna need to go. If we
No, it's
add
going to exactly,
150.
it's going to exactly the same location.
So if we did that 150 on that 10 acres that you're talking about, the water sewer would already be there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I do want to say that with what you're talking about with 100 in the back and 27 and then 150, now we're talking about 620 potential cars going to a town. You leave here and go during rush hour to Grafton.
Mhm.
So you maybe more than anybody else know what that's like.
Grafton's worse. Yeah, so
Do we want to make it?
yes.
We may get worse than Grafton if we do this.
Huffington's even worse. It's like.
Yeah, oh God, yeah, that light,
There-
that
there-
East Street light, I gotta go there.
There's no place around here now. The streets can't accommodate the traffic.
Yeah, I don't be too candid about it, but you will get more traffic on
it's terrible.
140 regardless of whether or not
Yeah.
It's worse.
you build
Coming
more
out
houses.
both ways.
And if you build it on East Street, you'll get more traffic
Yeah.
on Huffington.
Mhm.
So no matter where you put this 10 acres,
You're going to have more traffic.
you're gonna have more traffic.
If you're going to the highway or the train, you're gonna go back. If you start in the center of town, or if you start East Street, you're still gonna go through those lights. You're still gonna go through.
No, you're not gonna go up this way if you're coming from there, because you're gonna go up, you're gonna cut over on Elm and go out Forest to east to Hopkinton Road. No one's gonna go all the way to
I
Lane.
never heard anybody going up Forest.
Oh,
I
everybody.
just saw Forest today and I went, oh, look, there's a road there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's how they're gonna go.
Yeah.
But they're
But
also,
it's hard to get on
a
Hopkinton Road.
lot of them are potentially also gonna go the other way to Milford. Right, whereas up on East Street, that's not.
Oh, that really quick shot to Milford that way.
Yes.
No train stations in Milford. I guess I'm really concerned about density. I mean, the GL property in and of itself is extremely dense. I don't think people in Upton have really looked closely at that and are gonna see how that changes. The 40B property, again, a lot of density. What Lori says is correct. It's bad now, and then if you add all of these cars on, it's not good in this. Always the concern in Upton is the rural character of the town. I mean, it's going. I can't believe you think 150 extra units after approving 127, and I don't know what the 40B is behind Peterson's, but it's getting really dense
Yeah.
down in
No,
the southern part of
yeah,
Upton, and I don't
just-
like it at all.
Just to be clear, when you say you think this is a good idea, our goal here is to comply with state law.
Yeah, but we
And the-
can pick someplace else besides putting everything downtown. You put that many people and that many cars downtown, it's not going to be pretty. Spread it out. I know nobody wants it up on South Mechanic Street or Westboro Road or whatever, but that's where the trains are. I mean, you're heading over there to get to the train. I'm just appalled with what you're proposing because it's already so dense with GL approved, and if this 40B goes through, it's too many people, too many cars,
Through the
all
chair,
downtown. That's
There-
my
the-
opinion.
Okay,
I'm just weighing in.
through the chair, downtown was mentioned. I think Lori was suggesting.
Revitalization.
This board did consider the possibility of locating this district in the downtownish area.
right.
There was a lot of concern that there would not be support of that we just spoke of rural character, or just character in general, and maintaining, we have these competing views of wanting a walkable downtown area to be able to, patron our existing
Businesses.
businesses, thank you. And
Joe would have done that, didn't he?
to patron existing businesses and to help the downtown flourish in the way that the town would like to see it flourish. But then there's also this concern of, well, we don't want to overbuild and we don't want to lose the character that we have already. And so these are competing thoughts that this board has to wrestle with. This board decided to go with the Governor's Landing site for some of the reasons that were already mentioned is because it's already a bid site to an extent.
There's already water and sewer will be there.
Their water and sewer is going to be extended there. If water and sewer for some reason does not get extended there, well, then you're gonna be very hard pressed to get any units above, or even Governor's Landing, the 127 units.
Yeah.
But I understand and respect the concern of density.
Absolutely.
I think this is something this board very much was anticipating as far as, people being taken back by
Mhm.
that sort of density. I mean, it is a state mandate. The state did lower the threshold significantly from what they originally proposed, which I think was something like
50 acres, it was 50 acres.
50 acres.
but and
But also,
north of, I think, 700 or 1,000
Yeah.
units, something like that.
It's huge.
And so then they developed these other categories, and now we're small town, rural adjacent, and to the 150. So, yeah, it's very, I mean, wherever this board decides, should this, not pass a town meeting for whatever reason, you have to go back to the drawing board. It's gonna be a tough
Yep.
sell.
And just as a caveat, I don't think anyone in this board supports this unfunded mandate. I don't think anybody thinks this is the way that town should do their planning and zoning. The thing is, in this case, it is the law.
Yeah.
And we have to find a place for
And
it.
it's, and it is in response to the sort of NIMBY attitudes
Yeah.
of, that are out
I
there.
mean, yeah.
That right now, there's no place for
Yeah.
this kind of.
Yeah.
thing. So, yeah.
I know, but
But
the town, the town through many, many decisions keeps pushing everything downtown. And it seems to me that maybe we should think about developing other parts of the town because it's too much down here. And I just think long-term, we keep pushing everything downtown and there have to be other places in town that can take some development. It's not fair at all to people who
Is
live
this like
there.
a town meeting? Does the town get to weigh in the same?
Yes,
like,
of course, it's down.
That this in November?
This is the public hearing for this town.
Isn't one of the catch-22s of the law mandate though, is that this zone is supposed to be walkable to
Services.
services?
There's no place.
Not for-
That's workable.
Not for the requirements of this community.
No.
Not for the requirements of small town rural adjacent
Is
communities.
that what it is?
But for Grafton, who has a T station,
Yeah.
yes, that requirement, I believe, is in place for them.
Okay. So we're a step.
Yeah, we're a step below.
Step below that.
Through the chair, the state has obviously lost all touch with reality on what it's like to live in a small town. Is there any plans that they're going to do an unfunded mandate with affordable housing? What happened
I
with
have
affordable
no
housing?
idea, Tom, and that's not in this bylaw, so let's,
They already have it, they have 40B.
yeah, they have 40B, so let's not spend time on that right now.
So we-
Through the chair. Oh, sorry,
Okay,
Tom.
But, all right, then let's for imaginations, who are we actually taking care of here now? Are we taking care of the people that are moving in? And is it
Yes.
more important for them to be close to the access? Or is it more important for these people to be serviced because the closer to a fire station, the easier it is to put out closer to bus service? What are we thinking of? Who is our priority? Is it us taking care of them, or is it us them getting to their job? What's the priority?
Them getting to their job. That's the thing.
Well, I think through the chair.
It's then becoming part of our community, though.
Yes, I think the purpose of this whole law is that Massachusetts doesn't have enough housing.
Mhm.
So a lot of people, especially professionals in the biotech, the pharma, climate tech, industries are moving out. And the state's economy is suffering. So the state is looking to build housing for those people that work in those specific industries. So, Tom, to answer your question, who is it taking care of? It's taking care of the, it's providing housing for the folks that, you know,
Housing.
that are employed by our economic engines. And so that was the whole point of it. And again,
I
it's
agree,
not,
but what's the best way to take care of them? Is it to put them on East Street a place like East Street where they could get to their job easier? Or is it best for them to put them near the center of town where the services are more available?
well, you don't know where they work. I would wager that a lot of these people aren't gonna work in Boston and aren't gonna take a T. I think a lot of these people will be working in Worcester, they'll be working in Milford, they'll be working in Webster, they'll be working in Providence, they'll be working all over the place.
It's for the
So-
trains. The whole thing is for the trains. The whole point is for the trains,
The
to get people on
it's-
trains.
So yes and no. It is to get people on the trains that would otherwise be in cars. But it's also, as Kathy was saying, to provide housing. We have a huge housing shortage in the state. And, you know, there are businesses in Milford that are hiring people. There are, you know, and there's
Yeah.
there's all kinds of places that are hiring still. And so, yeah, I mean, actually, if I were going, to be honest, if I were living where we're talking about, what a lot of those folks are gonna do is go the other way towards Milford and then cut up Christian Hill or up, so they're not all gonna be going to the center of town. I mean, I suspect most of them on their way to and from work will not, because they'll use the other cutaways.
And I would wager, if we were betting, I would wager that the vast majority of these people are not gonna be taking the train into Boston. I would wager that a very small percentage, if any, will be taking a train into
They are
Boston.
finally gonna
It
improve some.
depends. If we
I
put
mean,
it downtown,
train
I
into
think it's
Boston
small, but
It
if
takes me 2 hours.
Yeah.
Just because of parking, getting to, there's no hub, going to the station and walking, and even with traffic, it makes sense to me to drive.
Through the chair, to Kathy's point, looking at census data, only 2% of your residents currently use public transportation.
that's
And
what they're
obviously,
trying to improve though.
yeah.
You know, if you put it
The whole point
downtown.
is to get them on the train.
2%.
It's to provide
If you put it
housing.
on East Street, I think you get them.
It's to providing housing, it's not to take people to the train, because people aren't gonna.
There
take the
won't
train.
there
But
won't
that's
be
the
more
purpose of the
people.
law.
Yeah,
That's
there
the
won't,
purpose of the mandate.
The law is a misnomer, they
The-
should have called it something
Well,
else.
Yeah,
that's the purpose of the mandate.
They should have
But
called it the housing
actually,
production.
They want people on the train.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think it's entirely possible that they simply piggybacked on the MBTA to create housing.
yes, I think
They
that's
had
exactly what they've done.
Yeah.
Right, so it wasn't about getting people closer to the train. It was about using the proximity to the train as a wedge to create additional housing.
Yes.
Right, that is exactly, I get what you're-
No,
and I think,
You're right.
right, you know, until, and they are saying that they're gonna get electric engines and improve the commuter rail, and when that happens, that could potentially be a game changer.
And when we get a shuttle to get us to
Yeah,
it.
we need a shuttle.
Because people aren't.
And, you know, I think that's something we need to talk about in terms of,
Madam Chair, does the improvements on Route 140, which is going to be a rotary in downtown, and how does that's going to make life a little easier for increased population up the street, won't it?
yeah, but I mean, improving roads never does anything except make bigger roads to clog.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to improve public transit, right?
Yeah.
We know that if you build a road, it will fill with more cars. That's
true.
That's the way roads work, unfortunately. But if we provided more public transit,
And access to public.
and access to the public transit, then, I mean,
What is one of the biggest misgivings about the East Street discussion, not to bring us back?
I think it was
Just-
water, sewer, and emergency services were the big ones.
If it does get developed, doesn't the developer bear the cost of the water and sewer installation?
It would be, I sincerely doubt they'd be putting water and sewer up there. I think they'd be doing wells and septic. You know, and the other thing is that, you know, there's you have a site that's already disturbed and a site that's not disturbed.
Yeah.
So I think that was another one of the considerations.
Because there's a big wetlands cross back into that upland.
Yeah. And you can't
Is,
do
is
it.
this 10 acres separate from Governor's Landing? Or is this
It is
including some
front-
of Governor's Landing?
So Governor's Landing is actually on 2 lots. It's on the big lot in the back and the 10
Yeah, I
acres
know
in the.
that.
And so it is the 10 acres in the front of that proposed.
That 10 acres, you're gonna put 150 units in.
That
Whoa.
is what we are going to allow. It is, that is what the,
And it's
this
very wet.
bylaw allow. It is not necessarily what anyone is ever going to put. We don't know what will go there. But we have to have a place that allows for 150 units on 10 acres.
But as a planning board, we're explaining that
150 units. It's,
that's the
wow.
plan, yes.
Yes.
Yes,
That,
that
that's
allows,
the state,
doesn't
that,
state it.
but
So if
now,
GL builds their 24 houses and then the 100 behind it, is it gone then for this 150
If they
MBTA
decide
zone?
to go the 24 that they're currently proposing, or 25 or whatever, then yes, it would be gone as an option, unless they tore those down and built more densely. But what they could
Is
do is
G-
come in,
No, or through the chair,
if they built,
they wouldn't. The zoning,
It
this
wouldn't
is,
change, right.
this is an overlay
Right.
district, so, the Governor's Landing as permitted
right,
currently, first of all, is permitted.
exactly.
And that is,
What I was saying is if they built that,
yes,
then they would have to tear that down in order to put 150, they'd have to tear down some units or pack more in.
oh,
What I suspect will happen, Kathy, is if this passes, they will come back to us with a revised plan that is denser than the plan that we have already approved. How much denser, I do not know, but that's what I suspect will happen.
and,
150 units on 10 acres is going to be a huge development. As you get into town, it's going to be a couple stories high each.
And
I
if I
don't
have
know,
question
it's just,
for Mike, through the chair, question for Mike. Now,
Advice.
you know, I don't like overlay zones because it confuses what is and what the now you have 2 different regulations on one piece of property. You have the overlay and its zoning on top of an existing zone. So what's going to be the overriding? It's going to be the overlay is now, in this case, the overlay is going to be the overriding zoning, right? As opposed to
what do you,
last time.
What do you mean by overriding? Someone could come in still
It's either
with a general
setback.
business plan. Right now, Tom, you remember that right now, they've already gotten a waiver on the GB zone to put housing in it.
Yes, but what I'm saying is when we did other things, the current zones, the setbacks, the dimensions, all of those things were the zone that they had to follow in the development. But in this case, it looks like it's the overlay configuration that'll dictate setbacks and sizes of house, access. All of
Unless
these
someone
things.
comes in
So
with a
this-
business proposal.
through the chair,
It's
Tom.
not- Go ahead.
Tom, so the overlay district will function as basically an option, right? So a developer could come in and propose to develop in accordance with the overlay district. And in this case, that's a multifamily by right in the way that's been presented, right? So they could submit a site plan application to this board showing multifamily buildings within that district. They could also come before this board as they've done, as the developer of Governor's Landing has done already, and provide actually they went to zoning board for the general business district, and they
Yep.
got approval to put the 27 units or however many it is on the frontage of that site to put those 27 units. So they could alter that plan in accordance to the general business district and follow all the general business district requirements. They would not be compelled to follow the multifamily overlay district. It's an either or situation.
They don't
Is there
have
any
to.
it's either or, then there's no overlapping of the regulations?
Right, it's
Correct.
either,
I have one other
So
question.
someone could come in and want to put in a CVS instead or something, right? And they would come to this board for a site plan and possibly to, I forget if that's allowed by right, I assume it is, possibly to zoning board by special permit or something. So,
yeah.
to
What
adjourn.
was your question?
I know in the center of town, there's 15,000 square feet minimum for a lot and 100-foot frontage. But for this development, you're talking here, what would those requirements be
100 frontage
for a single-family dwelling?
for a building, no, a lot, a minimum lot size. For 100 feet of frontage. And minimum lot size is 10,000 feet.
It's a height
10,000
square
The
feet.
height restriction is 2.5 stories.
Oh, that's where it's very different. Okay.
So we're not talking about,
What do we call that? What's this?
so it's not
district
gonna,
called?
we're not gonna, it's not gonna allow for what is being proposed at 47 Main Street, right?
Right.
Which is
Yeah.
4, depending on, 4 stories right now, but it would get proposed at basically 5 stories.
Right.
This would be half the size of that.
Right.
With
They
no
have-
provision in here that, I don't think, I'll double check, I don't believe there's a provision in here that allows for any sort of exception to that height requirement. It is, the only exceptions that exist for the height requirement are relative to eco roofs, energy storage, air source, heat pump equipment, solar thermal, like, things to serve the building pretty much.
So what, 2.5 stories, half a story is underground? Is that
No.
what they have? A half a story can be?
Stories are above grade.
Okay, so a half a story.
So that
Another
calls a single
That's like
family.
my houses don't have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another question
Yeah.
for Mike, if what's in the building code for this district in this overlay, and what's in the planning board requirements in the overlay? Because are these things that you just mentioned, those aren't part of the planning board's regulations in this overlay, right? That we require that, or is that part of the building code for that?
This will become your new zoning code
Yeah.
that regulates this district.
Or as an option for regulating this district.
Yes.
You can still put a CVS in there.
Through the chair, I had circulated late today, just because I'd spoken with town council in reviewing the draft. They had a number of comments, which I circulated their comments, and then my response to their comments, which I also circulated, and then today I married the two, and offered changes to the draft language as provided. And so I went ahead and sort of made changes immediately that were not of any real substance, didn't require any policy decisions, right? I changed articles and tenses and things like that, sort of, formatting. And then there were other things like, in section 8.2B, there was an addition of added applicability of the MCMOD, which is the acronym for this district. An applicant may develop a multi-family housing or mixed-use housing, and that was just added by council to hammer in the point that it will also be a mixed-use district, which will allow for businesses.
Yep.
Which we'll get to in a second as well. Obviously, DHCD was replaced with Housing Livable Communities. They pumped out this draft when DHCD was still here. Switched out the lot area definition that was offered in the template bylaw to make it consistent with what you already have as your definition for lot area. So things like that. I swapped out, for some reason in section 8.2 G4 and 5, they had like the sub A of those two sections needed to actually just be swapped. So just a silly change there. the unit threshold for the inclusionary zoning to kick in, council looked at this and they said, starting at 6 units actually doesn't get you to 1. If you're doing the 12.5%, you
Okay.
actually need to start at 8 in order for that to start. And that was a good catch because although that was going to be consistent with what this board and what the town has already adopted for inclusionary zoning, we're still waiting to hear from the Attorney General. Although it would have been consistent with that because of the state's requirement that you needed to provide an economic feasibility analysis that justified the 12.5%. 1 unit at 6 would have been a 16% ratio, which was not founded within the EFA, so it was appropriate to increase it to 8.
Yep.
There was a section, part of the bylaw that's talked about fiscal impact to the town and tax and revenue. And town council's comment was that's not a zoning concern. It's not an issue to leave it in, so I would just assume we'll leave it in. Council noted that industrial use was a part of the mixed use as far as all the available uses that could be a part of a mixed use development. In the standard language, it said industrial, and they questioned, hey, do you actually want industrial to be mixed? So I figured the answer would be no, so I'll go ahead and eliminate that on behalf of this board, should there be a vote tonight.
The second, the 2/3 majority.
Yes, so in section 8.2D, there are that's where we start getting into the mixed use component of this bylaw, and by introducing commercial uses that would otherwise that do require a special permit, because that was included in this. It would then be subject to a 2/3 vote at town meeting instead of just a majority. So I talked to town council, and they, it sounds like I can just, if this board would like, we can separate it into 2 articles. We'll provide the bylaw language, which just details the multifamily use, and then we'll separate the mixed use component, which is just 2 short sections.
Yeah.
And then, so you'll have a vote on the multifamily and then a vote on the commercial portion of it.
What's the reason for arranging it so that we avoid a 2/3 vote?
Because we want to get it passed.
Okay, we haven't taken the vote to do that yet, but okay.
Yeah, so I mentioned that as an option at the last meeting, if you wanted to do that. It honestly, it came up just because CMRPC said that they were going through this with West Boylston, and they were shocked to find out when they got to town meeting that the moderator was like, oh, this is a 2/3 vote, and they were like, wait a second, this is the multifamily district, per the law, yada, yada, this should have been.
Right.
But anyway, so
It
things
was
have been
because of
folded,
the-
and now
because of
we
the-
realize,
yeah.
that was something that we weren't anticipating to have to run into. So again, defer to whatever the board would like to do on that. Accessory uses. Council had made a concern, was concerned that by making by right uses that are allowed by right in the UCBD district, that it might create an unusual circumstance. And they were struggling to come up with an example. They said, like, if a bank has an accessory use to a multifamily apartment. And, I admit there might be a scenario that is unanticipated, but really, with mixed use zones, the intention is to allow for some flexibility and to incorporate uses in a mixed manner. But I mean, I'm supportive either way. If you wanted, if you felt you just want to strike it to avoid some sort of odd scenario of mixed uses. Again, it's kind of like if it's a by right use.
So right
I
now
don't
we
know why
have
it
it
could
so
be an
that,
accessory use, but
yeah, we have the by right uses in the business district.
yeah. It's an odd question. My intent in what including that for this board was to avoid a
Having to
scenario.
look at every single.
Yeah, and also to avoid a scenario where you're like, oh, I don't know if that can be, if a by right use is not allowed in a, you know what I mean? I don't know.
I thought we said earlier that it's either or. If someone comes in and wants to put a CVS there, they can't put.
Yeah, but we also, because we're saying that this is potentially a mixed use development, that someone might come in and have a yoga studio in their basement. Or have a, I don't know, a dentist office or something like that. And so I think by using the language that we did that said basically that anything that is a by right use in the business district could be a by right use in the mixed use district. We might be opening it up for weird scenarios is what
Wasn't that already approved when Governor's Landing went to the zoning board? Work with
Yes,
space?
yes, but this is now, that's in what's been approved in that waiver, but now we're talking about in our overlay district, we had said we wanted to allow mixed use in the overlay. But now, since that overlay bylaw has to define everything, that would include the mixed use.
And through the chair, in my comments, I made the example of if a yoga studio wants to have an accessory use cafe, I mean, that's something that I think you typically want to allow for, like this melding of uses. You know, I defer to the board. We could absolutely take it out, and I don't think it would have much impact to take it out. I think I just kind of threw off town council.
And you mean taking out the reference to the business?
Striking that.
Striking this 8.2 D3 that kind of hung.
Okay, that's fine.
You know, strike it.
Yeah, it just makes it easier.
Okay.
That makes it cleaner.
No, that's fine. Just make a note for myself. Okay. And I think I also suggested it seems like it was causing more trouble than it was worth. Dimensional standards. Council had just questioned if somebody was doing one of the UCBD uses, would the UCBD dimensional requirements apply? I said no. It was intended to just borrow from the uses that are allowed by right from that district or by special
Right,
permit.
but we don't need the dimension requirements. But if we're also striking that, then this kind of gets irrelevant, doesn't it?
Hold on.
And so you're talking about the dimension requirements piece.
Yeah. Well, I think yeah, well, I mean, you want to just strike that. That's well, no. E is
Oh, E is okay.
E is uses that may be permitted under section 3.2, which is your general accessory uses and structures. As that all of that is still allowed as an accessory here. I think actually that was in I might have mislaid that. That should have been for D, which was where a use may be allowed within the UCBD district by right or by special permit, but is not otherwise allowed in the underlying zoning district. The provisions of the UCBD district shall be applied. Again, I would suggest at this point just striking it if it's causing too much confusion.
Okay.
The intent was to say that, hey, all the uses that are governed by the UCBD district, we want to apply that here. And we still have all of our dimensional regulations that are proposed for this zone, which is borrowing from the UCBD district as far as the regulation of uses for the purpose of the mixed use. But again, I see that that's a bit confusing. We can always come back to it later. But to defer to the board, how you'd like to proceed with that.
Makes sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Question. I mean, we get an application and again, we have a overlay district which has its own certain specific set of rules. If we have to go back to the original district rules, it's gonna get confusing.
Right,
Agreed, so that,
so we're gonna strike that then, Tom.
yep. So that'll be C and D in that subsection that will end up
Okay.
being stricken. And that just leaves us typically with parking as being an accessory use and things like that. And so it's, as expected. I probably went a little overboard with that in the section just to trying to make sure that uses were allowed that would be intended to be allowed. Dimension, oh wait, go back here. Open space. So in 8.2 G2, which are your development standards for this bylaw, there is under site design, this subsection C says just open space, and there's no elaboration as to what open space means or what the board would like to see provided on a site or on design concepts provided to this board in terms of open space. So the council's comment was either, provide some parameters around open space or strike it to avoid confusion.
Just a question. I thought when we were at the design charrette or the workshop on this, open space is not included in, you can't have parks, you can't.
Or you can, but then you have
Oh,
to make everything else denser,
Yes.
basically.
I see where right. So were you to have, that's a good point.
So if we require open
Yeah.
space, then we'll have higher density on there.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Maybe we,
Governor's Landing already has its open space
yeah, it's got,
Is there anything?
pathway,
not in the front.
but they're
Yeah,
a trail.
yeah.
Right.
Would it be
What's the-
better? Go ahead, Tom.
What's the open space requirements? I don't remember there being any. Are there gonna be any?
There are none, but that's the issue at hand, which is,
It's mentioned, so we need to remove it. I think.
yeah,
I think we need to strike it.
Yeah,
yeah.
What do you mean strike it, not require any open space requirements at all? That's so Upton like.
At the design, at the meeting that we had, the workshop we had, if you open space, if in our 10 acres, we have a certain amount set aside for open space, we still have to build 150 units
or
of
we have to
housing.
allow.
We have to allow the
150
construction. It just has to be more dense. So
Am I
basically,
hearing
this,
we're
the way
going
this
to allow-
it does not want you to, to build parks, to build trails. It wants you to build housing.
Well, Upton requirements for open space is not just for parks or trails, it's for parks and recreation or what, so there's no requirements for the environment at all in this overlay?
Is there, maybe there's a way this board could, in place of the terminology open space, input something like community and recreational space?
But that still would increase the density of the area. We can't, it was my understanding that we couldn't do that.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have to, on your hypothetical 10 acres, you have to allow 150 units. So if you allow if you require a 2-acre park, then those 150 units have to be allowed on the other 8 acres. That was the way I understood.
That's, that's.
Yeah, I understand, but this is a brand new concept. It's an overlay, it's a different density. And we're not going to consider any impact to the flora fauna of that, whatever they're developing at all. It's just build everything, clear it. That's not Upton-like.
Well, Tom, that's what the thing that we've already approved is. It doesn't have open space.
I
back.
haven't voted on anything, but there's no other type of development anywhere that does not consider the nature here. None. This would be the first one.
So Tom, the subdivision we already approved there with the 27 units doesn't have open space. The open space is on the other lot on the back.
But all of, yes, 27 is different than 150.
Oh, I agree.
And the open space will still be in the
On the
back.
back.
And I think this 14 acres, not that it's open space, but there's wetlands. And that's why we're doing 14 acres rather than 10 acres. You know, but you know, the way the law is written, 10 acres has to be dedicated to potential housing.
Mhm.
So we can require all the open space and parkland and trails we want. We're just gonna have to squish the housing into an even more dense arrangement.
Yeah, that's a that's a, between a rock and a hard place with this, I
Yeah.
understand, that's.
No one likes this law, Tom. No one likes this law.
Yeah, what's more frustrating through the chair is that, I mean, this is recommended language by the state that
Yeah.
we're adapting for our own purposes here, and that's suggested language from the state is the open space. But Kathy, you make a great point about that being the incorporated into the density requirements.
Now, if you were setting aside 50 acres as your land, then you could say of that.
Yeah.
40 has to be open space, and you can have 10 acres
Yeah.
with 150
Yeah.
units on it.
Yeah.
But that's not what we have here.
They said that.
That was what was effectively proposed for the Mechanic Street land,
That's true.
right?
Yep.
So we're gonna
Very
strike,
dense development surrounded by a bunch of open space.
so we're gonna strike this section C, is that what we're gonna do, just for,
What do you think, Mike? Would we just strike it?
That's
Clarity?
that's certainly the easiest way to make it clear is to strike it.
Okay, let's do that.
short having clarification from the state?
Yeah, and that's that, yeah. Also, that's going to be what's frustrating for a long time with this is having the
Yeah.
actual clarification from the state. I'm sure,
Things
I
will be
guarantee.
10
The
years from now.
state knows what it's at.
No, exactly. 10 years from now, they might know the
Yeah.
answer, but right now.
Yeah.
Now I'm just seeing the fee in lieu as
Yeah.
well,
Um,
because that's what we often would do on a small spot site like this, is take a fee.
okay. Okay, I think I'm good on that. So open space, the fee in lieu of is the next thing, but council's general comment was that the state has not yet approved like fee in lieu of and or inclusionary zoning as a part of these districts as of yet, but my comment to the town council was, well, they explicitly said that they'd allow for it, plus they paid for our
Yeah.
paid for our study on our own behalf, so there you have it. But I understand their
If they
concern.
if they want to say no later, they can, but.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, I would, to the board, I would suggest leaving that in and not striking it. If for some
and
reason.
that was fee in lieu of open space.
No, I'm sorry, inclusionary zoning,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
That's
Oh,
right,
okay.
that's right. So it's inclusionary zoning or fee in lieu
Yeah.
of. Okay,
Yes.
Yeah.
then yeah, I agree. Let's definitely
if-
leave that in.
If the attorney general takes issue with it, they can strike that section, and it won't impact the rest of the bylaw.
Right.
8.2. Which is. Place. Council suggested that anything beyond I1 is, this is for the site plan, so subsection I is like additional site plan rules and regulations, pretty much kind of in the middle of this bylaw. So it was council's recommendation, like, hey, you already have rules and regulations for site plan, so no need to
No need
repeat
to
anything
repeat them.
here. So,
Just say something like site plan regulations C.
yeah, so basically the section has been gutted for everything except for subsection 1 of that, which is just the applicability to state that, to mimic what your regulations already
Okay.
say, which is anything for dwelling units and beyond requires site plan. And that's what it already says. And then it defers explicitly to the governing section of site plan that you already have in place.
That makes sense. Don't
Mike,
duplicate.
Well, excuse me, what would be the requirements of the site plan? What would they be going by? The overlay district's requirements?
They'd be,
No, we'd be then referring back to the town site plan requirements.
But
So
our
the site
site plan
requirements we already have.
on, but none of our site plan requirements are based on this type of a project, are they?
well, your site plan requirements, Tom, are specific to as what this section had prior, or depending on if you're looking at the language that was already sent out. That section just detailed what the requirements are to submit to the board
Site plan.
as far as having a design in front of you and what it should include. You know, things like North Arrow and stuff like that.
It's a process.
So
right?
you, yeah,
Okay.
so you already, your subdivision, your site plan rules and regulations already have a detailed breakdown of all of those requirements.
All right, but, all right, so the application, what would be the reviewable part of that site plan for us? Would it be sending out to an engineer? And would the engineer look at the site plan based on the overlay district's regulations?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it
Yes.
would be following our site plan review process, that's all.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, and subsection K was the I'm looking at an updated version, so I apologize. K was a section, so I'd spoken with RKG at the end of our public engagement session. And what they had indicated to me is that having a unit cap on the district was you could still comply with the state's requirements through the compliance model. But what they failed to acknowledge when I talked to the town council was by putting in unit cap requirements, that then creates this issue that council suggested, which is this is essentially a development limitation bylaw, which is not limited in time and therefore may be struck by the Attorney General or subject to challenge in court. Development limitation bylaws must generally be temporary in nature or associated with a comprehensive planning process to study the potential impacts of development. So they suggested striking it.
And they also suggested, it sounds like if we don't, then the AG will.
Yeah, they said it wouldn't apply.
Mike, one quick question, if I may. There's a section in our bylaws that say when there's a certain number of units, building permits out, the building inspector can limit the future development with 24 units per year. Does that apply? Are you familiar with that restriction?
Yeah, I am. That would not kick in to impact this proposed zoning district.
Why is that?
Because it's
not based on building permits issued?
what isn't?
The restriction, the limit on the number of units can be built in the town. It was just I think we put in way back when to make sure we didn't grow too fast, that we didn't have units come in at one time. And so we put a restriction in there that said when there's a certain number of building permits outstanding, the building inspector has the right to limit future builds to slow things
Tom,
down.
It sounds to me from what the attorney said is that if anyone were to ever challenge that, we'd probably lose. Because that would also be
That was the indication.
yeah, that would be a limitation, a development limitation bylaw that is not limited in time. And so the AG just wouldn't accept it.
So, but through the chair, Tom, I am aware what you're talking about. That section, I believe, is specific to whether it was intended to be or not is specific to subdivisions. So the way I read it is that if a certain building threshold was met, then proposed really larger subdivisions could potentially be subject to that bylaw where the building inspector could limit building permits, I think, to within those larger subdivisions. So this wouldn't apply to that.
Well, my point was, is there any way to not have these all built at once and to have them gradual and released in a reasonable manner.
Perhaps maybe, but based on town council's suggestion here, I'd be hesitant to suggest anything like that to this board, just out of concern that it wouldn't pass muster through the Attorney General's office, and it sounds like it would need to be, the way that council phrased this, it sounded like it would need to be very temporary in nature. So I wouldn't.
But in every other type of development, the planning board and the towns retain the authority to have it built at a pace that they can service, so that they can handle. Is there any limitation on how fast these 150 can be built, or can 150 all at one time, or can we limit it to when one unit's completed or a section is completed, like we do? We don't release all the lots generally in anything. We hold some back to ensure completion. This one, we held one lot back in many places. There's no controls that we have over occupancy releases.
It's a good question. I think because I don't believe that question has been directly addressed by the state through their, obviously the law or the regulations that they've promulgated. So with regard to this district, I would be concerned about implementing anything like that. But just because I don't have any information from the state on it.
Is it in our subdivision? Is that language in our subdivision bylaws? Or is it spelled in, it's in the zoning bylaw?
And it's specific to your subdivisions, though. That's the way it's.
But if it's in, then we don't need this language.
No, because this isn't a subdivision. This is a special permit.
No, this is not a special permit. This is by right.
This, I mean, it's
Oh, it's by right, okay. So even though it's part of the subdivision, Governor's Landing,
right.
it's by right, so it's not.
Well, it depends. If it's a separate lot from Governor, I don't know.
I thought it was all part of the subdivision. I thought it was.
Well, but if they come in and up the number of units, they may separate it so that it's, I don't know.
So, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have any guidance to really provide on that, just because, well, really, I don't have any, I was not provided any guidance on it, so.
So I have a question. If the Attorney General gets rid of it, that's not a fatal flaw.
We don't have it, we don't have it in here
It would,
at all.
yeah, regardless, you don't have it to apply to this anyway.
Okay.
But I recognize Tom's point, which is specific to this,
Yeah.
which is concern of building everything all at once and being overwhelmed with services.
Yeah.
It's a realistic concern. I just don't, unfortunately, I can't, based on council's comments, I would steer away from it, but I recognize that's a concern.
Must be generally temporary in nature and associated with a comprehensive planning process to study the potential impacts of development.
So it sounds like with that last phrase sounds to me like you would need to have an impact study of some sort already developed and in place that you can point to and say this. I mean, it's an understandable and reasonable concern, but it sounds like with anything, I mean, much like Bill was just commenting on the promulgation of the actual MBTA's zoning law as being either specifically tied to the train stations or tied to housing, they tied it to the trains as a way to get the housing in. So much like you'd be looking at something to phase construction, you would need to say, because we have this, we're then making this, which is pretty standard to justify new regulations.
So I would support striking it.
Yeah. I think we have it.
Yes.
Okay, that was the end of that.
Yeah, so that was that. If the board is inclined, I had and Margaret, in your packet, I had a suggested motion. I just made notes on it.
Yes, we're so I'm ready to go.
Well, here's I think handwritten note on it as well. Just
Okay.
Put it in.
I saw it, there it is. I know I saw it somewhere. All right,
And so, and this is, that part's just to make a separate article if you wanted to, if the board is so inclined.
I think it makes sense to do two art, well, and, yeah. So, here's the motion. I move to recommend that the town of Upton adopt the proposed MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District and the associated bylaws amendments to sections 300, 2.1, 302.2, 305.10.b, and the addition of the new 308.2. I also move to find the proposed district as eligible location, is an eligible location as determined by Master General Law, Chapter 40. It's Chapter 40A, Section 1A, and used in Mass General Laws, Chapter 40A, Section 5, and to separate the proposed bylaw into two articles. The second article to be for sections 308.2D and 302 and 308.2D3.
And just before there's a second and before there's a motion, and that motion is subject to, obviously, my document here and the changes that the board has discussed tonight already.
Can I ask, through the chair, looking at this motion, we're recommending the town of Upton adopt the proposed MBTA Communities Multifamily Overlay District, but we're not prescribing where. Or
No, it is. It's, and find that the proposed district isn't, I also moved to find that the proposed district is an eligible location. So we are mentioning the proposed district.
Okay.
But I mean, you can also just say friendly amendment, that, I mean, I've already showed the proposed district as a part of your meeting materials. That the map amendment and the bylaws on file with the clerk's office. Somebody just say so moved.
Okay. Does someone want to make that motion?
I will make that motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Tom,
I would recommend a no.
Kathy,
Yes.
Bill,
Aye.
Bill, Mike,
Yes.
Bill,
Aye.
Margaret, aye. Okay, motion passes.
So Ken, yes.
Everyone but Tom was a yes.
We have to vote on the second.
That was all in one motion.
That was all in one motion.
Unless you wanted to say.
No, I think one.
No.
Okay, so with that, we
Tom,
close.
did you start to say something? Oh, I guess not.
Okay, with that, we close the public hearing for the MBTA district zoning bylaw, and we and reopen the regularly scheduled meeting. And now we are suspending the regularly scheduled meeting and opening a public hearing on a proposed amendment to the zoning bylaws for personal wireless facilities.
Aren't you glad I forgot to advertise ADUs?
Yes.
So can I ask a question before we get started? Is this the same as we proposed at the last town meeting?
Exactly.
Okay, so there's been no changes made.
No changes. Well, let me refer to my handy memo, make sure there are no changes. Very small changes in questions.
At the last town meeting, you mean, or in our last?
At our last.
Both, there have been no
Yeah.
changes since your last town
Town
meeting,
meeting, okay.
or your last discussion about this.
So formatting and bolding is an important change. Sure.
So to give the abbreviated version, because even though it's a new public hearing, I believe most people are familiar with this. The proposed amendments are intended to capture for the new use that is being promulgated throughout the state, throughout the country, of what is commonly known as 5G wireless, but noted herein as small cell wireless transfer facilities. Those are small antennas, as I understand them, small antennas, small boxes that emit information that connect to other wireless antennas as a different mode of transport for information as opposed to just hardwired connections like fiber. And so what this intends to do is identify that as a use in your zoning bylaw, because previously it was not identified as a use. And in order to regulate something, you must first identify it. So that's what this seeks to do, is it adds small cell wireless as an identified use in your zoning bylaw, which then requires that it defines it as an accessory use. And the reason for that is, I believe, because it's accessory to telecom generally. And it will be most likely situated on existing telephone poles, which are, again, already are attached to some sort of information transport via hardwiring. And further, it requires that small cell obtain a special permit through this board in order to happen, in order to be located anywhere in town. And that is, it's zoning bylaw. So as discussed previously with this board, zoning pertains to real property, private property, not rights of way. Rights of way are governed by either the state or by the the select board. And so obviously we've been in discussion with the select board into partnering up with rules and regulations that will be triggered by this bylaw, but we don't have those yet necessarily. We do have a draft form. But we're not discussing the rules and regulations tonight. It is just the bylaw changes that you've seen before. So I guess I'll leave it at that.
Now, am I correct in that the last time the board considered this, that it had our unanimous support as written?
Actually, I think it was 4-1 at the time, all voted against it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Well, Paul's not here. No.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
No, thank
But it was supported at the time. and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, it was definitely supported at the time.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
well, the only reason we didn't vote it the last time was because town council came through saying that our support materials were in error.
Yeah, town council had an issue with, and it's since been addressed, and I'm frustrated that this wasn't a suggestion prior, is because the language of the bylaw was printed in the warrant. They wanted to make sure that every little change was accounted for. And it's going through a lot of pages of code, and accounting for every little change is difficult.
Yeah.
Or at least it is for me.
So it's a technicality.
Yeah, it's technicality.
And it was 2 hours before the meeting.
And the request from town council, I don't mind saying on a recorded meeting, what came in last minute as well, is that the request to do it came in last minute, and then their review of that request came even more last minute.
It was one of the worst calls they've ever made, having to call Lori.
So bad day for everyone all around.
To all these people when I didn't understand it at all.
So,
I'll just quickly, if you don't mind, just go through my notes here. So section, these are just the small changes that were made, formatting, bolding, in the article language. Town council just added a description to say add new section D, and that's for the accessory uses that I was talking about. They just called that out specifically.
Extra copy of that, I don't have.
Yeah, I'll get it to you.
Great.
if I can share,
General, J.
follow along.
Oh, there was a section in it was subsection J. Such conditions shall be imposed in writing with the granting of a special permit, and then it said, or issuance of an approval. And town council will, hey, what does that mean? And I agreed that I didn't know what that meant.
No.
But I believe that it meant or site plans.
Right,
So
yeah.
I just changed, because obviously those are the two approvals with regard to this that can happen through this board. So it now just says special permit or site plan. So small change, I figured that was acceptable.
Yeah.
The word permit looks like it's crossed out though.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
I could have just, in making this,
Yeah.
it was done, but I'll be sure.
Be sure that-
Yeah,
Permit stays in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will look at that.
I'm not calling you again, it was Margaret.
I won't answer.
So
I'm believing them.
If you see my name pop up, you'll be like, nope.
town council questioned a portion of section G where it says this bylaw section is to permit regulation of the installation of small cell wireless facilities outside of public property. Council said, for sake of clarity, do you want to add including public ways? And my response to that was maybe. We will confirm with the planning board, but there is the expectation that the select board will adopt rules and regulations pertaining to public ways, but also that zoning, as we know, doesn't extend into public ways. So I didn't feel it was a very necessary change to make.
I don't think it's appropriate since this is zoning bylaw, correct?
Yeah, I
We
was
don't have jurisdiction, yes,
Yeah, we don't have jurisdiction over
So-
public ways.
kind of confused as to why they
Okay.
suggested it.
Do we have jurisdiction over other public property?
Yes.
Yeah.
For zone, yeah.
Question, Mike? If I may, now the right of way, that would be streets, but we have a lot of private ways. Those would not be included. The senior
yeah, I
housing is a
don't-
private.
That's a good question. I think it would depend on how it was permitted. So for senior housing, if it was permitted through a special permit and the way is actually just basically a driveway that's named, yeah, you would have, this board would have authority over it through zoning. But if it's a way that's been dedicated and created through the subdivision, through subdivision control law, that actually, deeds it as a right of way, you would not have control over it. Does that make sense?
Like streetlights.
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense to me,
Okay.
because if it's a subdivision
Mhm.
and it's not public land, it's private land, why wouldn't the zoning have jurisdiction over it?
No, the zoning would have jurisdiction over the land within the subdivision, but not the road,
Who would have jurisdiction over
the
it?
select board.
If the road has been accepted, but I
Oh,
think.
no, well, that was the thing I was missing.
Yeah.
So if it's the road has been accepted.
Yeah, but if it's
But
a
if the
private
hasn't been
road,
accepted,
The same goes with even a private road,
Okay.
because private roads, again, depending on how it's been permitted and deeded, a
Okay.
private road can still exist as a right of way with public access to. It's just controlled differently or isn't maintained maybe by the town. A private way to give a concrete local example of like Cobbler's Creek, those are not roads, it's in my understanding. Those are basically driveways. Those are glorified driveways that were not, so like that is one big lot, right? That all of those homes exist on one lot. And that road is more or less a driveway that just serves the interior of that lot.
so the zoning laws would not be applicable to, even though it's private
No,
property.
it would apply to
Okay.
that, to that.
Okay,
okay,
and what is an example of the other one?
a private road that we would not have.
That zoning would not?
Locally, I can't think of one.
Okay,
Okay,
all right. I think we're,
Oh, the little extension on Mr. Morel's property. That one. You would not have jurisdiction on that, even though it would be,
Oh.
because that would be deeded as a right of way, but it wouldn't be under the control, you wouldn't plow it, you know what I mean?
Okay.
It's
you're
not
talking about the extension into the,
into the solar field.
okay,
It would be deeded as an easement.
Yeah.
Right.
okay.
So I'm still, but it says is to permit regulation of the installation of small wireless facilities outside of public property. So the town owns a whole bunch of land throughout.
Do you
Who
want-
has authority over that in terms of what can be done?
The way this is written outside of public property, it wouldn't regulate it on public property. And I don't believe that our bylaw defines public property, so it might mean town owns land.
If the town decides to put a 5G facility
Yeah.
on the town barn property, then that would be regulated by the select board, not by this board. Is that what you're saying?
Wait, so again,
The town barn, the town decides that's public property, we're gonna put a 5G facility there.
right,
We wouldn't have
the way
any,
that this is written, you would.
we wouldn't regulate
And
that.
how about something like Stebbins Farm?
Thanks.
It's farms town,
Yeah.
This sounds
public property.
incorrect, yeah.
Yeah, so if we wanted to put it on the DPW, which, you know, we wanted to put up cell towers or whatever, apparently this would expose that to planning board.
So I have a stupid question. How many? How many parcels would this apply to?
Very few.
Like
Very few.
realistically, how many would apply to?
No, I'm just wondering roughly. So the big thing when it comes to controlling 5G
Is
is to work on the regs with the Board of Selectmen,
Yes,
because this really isn't gonna,
yeah,
Okay.
because it's not like a tower. It's not
Yeah.
like someone's gonna come and put a 5G.
this is gonna be like the telephone pole I had to build at the end of my
driveway.
driveway. Okay, because that's.
Kathy, I think that's a great question because this particular, what we're doing now isn't necessarily for us. It's going to be a template for them because they're going to get the most use. The
Okay.
selectmen are going to get the most action out of this, but this is going to be a template for them to go by.
Okay, good.
Okay,
In town council, obviously,
Yeah.
same
format.
comments as before about requiring a special permit. This board has already affirmed that you
Yeah.
wanted to proceed with special permit. But I just wanted to mention that, and the additional new section G.
that's just a format thing.
Oh, yeah, ignore it, yeah. That was just my frustration with. That was me being.
A little frustration leaking through there. Okay, do I have a motion?
Oh, do you want to open
Public
it up to
comment.
public?
Oh, public comment, I'm sorry.
Public hearing.
We have the public here. Does anyone want to propose this as the public?
I don't oppose, I just want to get on the first page of this, where you're talking about the definition format coding, that the new section D, what is that new section D?
Oh, it's,
Accessory.
it's accessory structures. It's section, D under 3.2.
It is what we are adding here, basically.
It was already in the last one.
It's a game.
All they did is she just called it out down here because it wasn't
Oh, yeah.
down there before.
Thanks.
That's all.
Anything else?
No, just so long as that permit goes back in.
Okay. All right,
I do want to just say one thing, even though it's not a big tower that they're gonna put up in your yard, it's a little tower that they're gonna put up in your yard.
Oh,
And it's
I understand.
instead of pulses 24 hours, it's not like a wave anymore, it's a constant.
yeah, no, I understand that. I'm just saying that it's, there, I don't think there's gonna be a lot of people that are looking for them in their yards, so. Yeah, okay, so do we have a motion on the cell towers?
Make a motion, but I don't know what the language is.
Oh,
Because Michael
I
didn't
didn't.
provide
There's no.
very
Yeah.
much.
The other one was more
More
specific.
specific.
You would just make a
Motion to
motion to
support,
recommend.
yeah, to recommend this to town.
Recommend the town meeting.
Yeah,
I move we recommend the small cell wireless Article 18 to town meeting.
do I have a second?
I'm second.
Okay, all
Subject to the changes.
subject to the changes discussed this evening. Yes. All in favor, Tom,
Aye.
Kathy,
Aye.
Ken,
Aye.
Bill,
Aye.
Margaret, I. Okay, now, one more thing. Dean Pond request for bond reduction.
Do you need to close that last public?
Oh,
comment?
yeah, yes.
I'm learning a lot.
Closing the public hearing and reopening the regular meeting. And the Dean Pond, Claflin Pond.
So you just have the official letter from
Requesting,
Lotus around this, but I have not heard back from Stantec as far as providing the accounting of,
And I, we're not gonna make a motion tonight.
No,
Okay. There are a couple of other things here under other under other action items, APU bylaw discussion. We're not gonna worry about, do we, oh, there's public hearing at our next.
You will have,
We closed the, yes, we did close the public hearing and reopened the meeting.
Okay.
We did.
There's the Dean Pond and then open.
That's
Oh,
not-
Dean Pond is.
Oh, that one, I'm sorry.
It's just a meeting.
Mistake.
for the accessory dwelling unit, I just very quickly, I did the same thing that I did for the other two ones, because I did talk to council about this. Obviously, just make a motion on this next, you don't have a public hearing, but I went ahead and made some changes to that bylaw. Some of them are silly things. I mean, there was just a third part of the state's definition that they wanted me to include in our local definition, so that it was exactly the same. So I went ahead and did that. But you can read my comment as to the reasoning for that. And then they went ahead and called out the AR, SRA, and SRB districts, all the residential zoning districts within the language of that, because the law is specific to residential districts. That's important to keep in mind, just because your previous accessory apartment bylaw was not tied to your residential districts. That was, so it was allowed townwide. So just quickly, if you want to give me some feedback on.
So we're allowed to
So-
to limit it to,
Yeah, so you could,
Residential
in theory, say this only applies to residential districts. My suggestion to this board would be, you have a lot of single-family homes in your C&I district, your commercial and industrial on the west side of town, right? So they currently are eligible to apply for a special permit for this. Do you want to still continue to make them get a special permit, even though they are
you want to.
single
Yeah,
family?
no, I just think the way that this law is written, where the town basically has
No control.
no control, that I'd like to limit it as much as possible.
Okay, if that's the general consensus.
And, but I see, it seems like that, then you would be
Treating one.
treating one,
Treating one differently than the other.
yeah,
Well, they can still get it, they just have to go for a special permit.
I'd be more comfortable permitting it as a by right use district. I mean, it's constructively, it's a residential zone.
Mixing business and residential, commercial and residential is never a good idea.
But we're talking about the things that are already there, Tommy, and they're pre-existing.
You talk about Glen Ave.
But if we have a law that says you could put this a detached unit on a commercial zone and have a person live there residential, really? Is that what I'm hearing?
If there's so Glen Ave was the example we just got. That's the CNI, but it's a residential neighborhood. And so.
So we got a thing that says we're gonna put, we're thinking about putting this research and development in our zoning, so we change it to a biolab and you're gonna let somebody live there too?
No,
It doesn't make sense.
No,
We should be-
it's only it's only for
You're
residential
saying
properties.
allow businesses to have an ADU.
No,
No.
businesses cannot have an ADU.
But the question I have is that, because one of my big concerns about this whole thing is landlords who don't really have a connection with the town coming in and buying a piece of property so they can put one to how many, so they make this
It's
space.
limited to one.
No, the special permit, they get more.
Yeah.
They can get as many, I think as many as they want. Yeah,
I think it was capped at 3.
was it county?
I think
that's-
special permit,
that's
you can
with a
get
special
one.
With special.
But still, it's like, I just
Well, that's what
don't
special
like-
permits for.
I would prefer that my preference, and if I'm not voted, I'm not voted, is
Is
that,
that residential units in the CNI are treated differently than
Yes.
residential units in residential zone.
This is true affordable housing. If they have access to utilities, this is true affordable housing.
Mm-hmm. It is true affordable housing.
maybe.
So, anyways,
Alcohol.
the reason,
I don't think anything in Upton is affordable.
the reason why I kind of wanted to address tonight is because I wanted to get the final language, even if something were to change from the public hearing on this, it just prevents a scenario like with 5G last time where I'm like required to account for all changes.
Right, well, I mean, if we restrict it for now to residential and see what, and then see how it goes, see what happens, we have no,
Sure.
I feel like we know nothing.
Have any idea how many homes are actually in the CNI?
Yeah, you're restricting
That's a
probably
fair amount.
20 houses,
Well,
maybe.
well, here's the question, if I may. We have some CNI zones that have houses on them because there was a ZBA variance granted. Does a ZBA variance allow, even if it was residential in our bylaw, does the ZBA allow to put this use into
That's what we're-
CNI?
That's what we're saying, Tommy, that what we could do is we could say that this use is only allowed in residentially zoned properties, which would mean that those in the CNI would have to get a special permit if they wanted to do it.
And then it would buy us, I think one of the things we're looking at, Tom, if I'm correct, is to buy time. Because we've got to go back and make some change. This is just to get, I think the law, another unfunded mandate, the law requires that we have something in place by February 24th or some weird date like
Yep.
that. And so this will help us do that with the
That makes-
anticipation that we're gonna go back, especially as the state actually
Makes
start
their mind
make
about
up their mind
things.
about what they're doing. And then we will go for another one to accommodate.
That's a good point because we don't currently have any direction
We have
on this
nothing.
bylaw.
No.
And the state said that they would be creating regulations, but I have no timeline on those regulations or anything. So-
So I withdraw my objection.
Okay, so.
And then the other thing,
Yep.
the one other thing, and I'll leave that as is, my assumption is that this board did not want to take the opportunity to discuss short-term rentals as a part
I
of
would
this.
like to see, I mean, I know what I just said, is we can go back and do it, but I think from the
Currently-
get-go, we should not allow short-term rentals.
Currently, you do not allow short-term rentals as provided
Okay.
in the decision from your building commissioner that was upheld by the zoning board.
Okay,
So it is the building commissioner's determination that short-term rentals is not a use that is defined in your bylaws, therefore it is prohibited.
okay.
So
So it's
you do
redundant.
not
Okay.
need to take any action within, but if you would like to do that for May,
Mhm.
then we can have that discussion. Sure.
Okay,
But we probably won't need to because
Right.
it's already, okay. Cool.
okay. So that's the ADU Community Center parking plan.
Oh, yeah. Dennis just wanted me to touch base with this board because he's adding 2 ADA spaces to the parking lot over there. It's not an addition of any additional spaces. It's a redesignation of existing parking plus a fire lane. It's the overall plan, and I can show you if you'd like, the overall plan is not changing. So he just wanted confirmation from this board. He does not need to come back again for any sort of minor amendment or approval for site plan.
Almost 10 o'clock.
I don't think so. I think changing to,
Perhaps I should know this, but does it change the number of parking spaces in any way?
It does not.
Okay.
It's just putting them closer to the entrance of the senior
Yeah.
center, correct?
Yes, just moving some things around.
Yeah.
But we don't, we refer to the ADA or AAB for whether it's okay or not, don't we? So they just give us a list of things, they okay?
With regard to whether or not you're compliant with providing those, yes.
So all the
Okay.
planning board would need, all the planning board need from him would be a letter from both federal and state saying that that's fine.
They don't provide that. Emily.
no. But the planning board. I mean, I don't, the question, Tom, was whether he has to come back with a minor site plan change, and I don't think so, if he's just changing which parking spaces are ADA.
And I think it's also rectifying the problem that was
Right.
identified
Yes.
early on, is that, you know,
I
they
think-
have the handicapped access and the handicapped spaces next to the playground.
Yeah.
And they don't have it near the senior center. And so I think that was one of the things that was identified early on by, you know, the ADA,
Yes.
you know, advocates and folks like that, because this needs to be fixed.
Yeah. And they're not, ADA board is not gonna complain about increasing the number of ADA spaces. So I think we're good.
But I guess what I'm saying is the question isn't for the planning board, it's for the building department who has to sign off on each aspect of.
Just asked the planning board whether we would require a site plan amendment for this, and we just said, no, and we're saying no.
Why are we saying no? Because it doesn't change the total, or because it's approved already by somebody else? Why are we
Because
saying it doesn't?
It doesn't change the total. All it does is add 2 spaces, change 2 spaces that are currently not ADA into ADA. ADA is not going to complain about having more spaces. I don't think that we need them to come in with a site plan revision.
And adding a fire lane, which I think is something public safety
I know.
area.
I don't want to take up too much time, but why are they changing the spaces? We're not even going to ask why they have to change.
We know,
spaces.
Tom, we already had this discussion. They're adding these 2 extra spaces because the spaces right now are down by the handicapped entrance by the playground. But
Yeah.
a lot of the folks that come to the senior center don't want to walk that far. So they're adding a couple of handicap spaces down at the senior center end to allow people to not have to walk it.
And a ramp.
And a ramp.
And a fire thing. And that again is an identified problem. I mean, I've talked to Lynn Haggerty about this numerous times. I've talked to a number of people about it. It's an identified problem, is that the folks, and it's not that they don't want to walk, they can't walk. You know, they can't walk from the playground up to the senior center.
Yeah.
And it's rectifying a design flaw,
Yeah.
basically. I mean, that was poorly designed.
So,
Yeah. So,
all right.
so I don't think he needs to come in. If you're polling people. No.
I don't. Okay, I believe with that, the meeting is adjourned.